Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the Haven. Guys, we are your hosts, Tame and Ginger Chains. Guys, for years, myself and Ginger Chains have discussed doing a football-related podcast. And for years, we've been putting it off, whether it be because it wasn't the right time, or time constraints, or one of us fell into some deep personal shit. Whatever. It's finally happening. We finally decided now is the time. It is the time to finally unveil the latest project we have been working on. This has been years in development. The Helmet Haven Football Fuck-Up Show. Guys, Kenny here is going to be our numbers and analyst guy, and of course myself. I'm going to be our color commentator. Guys, what we're going to be doing here is basically, this is obviously our first episode of the season, it's still the off season technically, where Kenny has compiled a list of notable signings and movings and whatnot from the off season and during free agency, and basically we're gonna go through the list, and we're gonna basically give you the rundown of what's been going on so far. Guys, I'm also going to establish this right now. Our schedule is that we are going to be doing a new episode each week. The first 3 episodes on Mondays, always starting at noon Central. And then after those first 3 episodes, guys, we are probably going to move to Wednesdays at noon, just because I feel like that'd be a bit more natural. Wednesday's a day where there's no football on, and plus that way that gives us a good chance to cover the entire week once we actually make the, football season itself. So, Ginger Chains, anything you want to say?
I think we are good to get started here.
All right, guys. So, guys, obviously, we have had a lot of movings, a lot of signings, and a lot of news. And myself and Ginger Chains have we've compiled a list for you. So we're gonna. I believe we're supposed to start off with the retirements. I thought you said, right?
Yes, we are actually starting with the biggest retirement news. Aaron Donald retires from the NFL after just 10 seasons, all with the Rams.
Yo, first off, Aaron Donald, like when my future kids someday ask me, Dad, how good was Aaron Donald? The only thing I'm going to be able to tell them is that teams would triple cover this guy, and he would still find his way to the quarterback.
Not only that, but sometimes they'd even quadruple cover him, and it still wouldn't help.
Yeah, no, this man was an absolute machine. My God, I don't think we're ever gonna see another pass rusher quite like Aaron Donald. That man just, oh man, that man just knew where the quarterback was, and he knew how to put that quarterback on his ass. That was his primary objective in life, was just find quarterback, put quarterback on his ass.
Yeah, it was. He was quite something. While we're talking on Aaron Donald, a lot of what makes Aaron Donald so great, too, is he didn't miss many games.
Oh, definitely. 10 years, yes, 10 years, you can argue that 10 years is short-ish. I still argue that that's a decent chunk of time. That's a decade of your life. But, throughout those 10 years, he managed to stay regularly healthy. And not only that, but despite any injury he may have had at any point during any season, he always came back just the same. Talk about consistency. This man knew what his job was.
All right, and while we're here, let's talk about the accomplishments of Aaron Donald. Obviously, he was a Super Bowl champion when the Rams won that ring a few years back. He's a 3-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time Sporting News NFL Player of the Year, 6-time Pro Focus Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time 101 NFC Defensive Player of the Year, 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year through PFWA, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2014, He's an 8-time All-Pro selection, which means he was only not an All-Pro twice, and he was selected to the Pro Bowl every single year he played.
Yeah, no, bona fide Hall of Fame resume right there for that man. No doubt a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, obviously, first ballot Hall of Famer,
First ballot,
and
no
he
questions
gets in,
asked.
he gets in as soon as his name's mentioned on the ballot. He's getting in
Oh,
because
he
nobody can give a
definitely,
good
definitely.
reason.
Quite frankly, if he doesn't make it in when his name first appears on that ballot, quite frankly, that'd be a robbery.
All right, next one we have to talk about is arguably the best center to ever play the game, Jason Kelsey.
Jason
Retires.
Kelsey. Oh man, you know what? As much as I'm no, I'm annoyed thoroughly by the combination of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey, but let me just say for the record, Jason Kelsey on the other hand is peak man. My God. That man was the headline of the Super Bowl for me. That man knows how to celebrate.
In a 13-year career, Jason Kelsey had obviously a Super Bowl with the Eagles back when Nick Foles led them to that win. Six
Big
first team
Dick
All Pro,
Nick, shout out.
6-time first team All Pro, and 7-time Pro Bowler. I believe he didn't miss many, if any, snaps in his career either, which is quite impressive considering he played for 13 of them.
Yeah, that is quite impressive, especially for someone that plays such a physical position like center,
Oh yeah, I
or
just
any
found it
position
here.
on the
Yep,
offensive line for that matter. That's a very physical position.
he started all 183 games of his career.
That is quite impressive. That is very impressive. He has a full
Next,
183 game resume, guys.
so we have one of the best defensive players to ever play the game, if not arguably the best, in obviously Darren Donald retiring. We have arguably the best center to ever play the game, arguably retiring. And here's another D lineman retiring. Fletcher Cox retires from the NFL after 12 seasons, all of which with the Philadelphia Eagles as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Another Super Bowl champion with the Eagles from that historic run with Big Dick Nick. Guys, Fletcher Cox. Let me just say for the record, Fletcher Cox. I'm not big. I'm not like a super big Fletcher Cox fan, but man, this guy understood the assignment. He knew what he knew what he was. He knew what he basically every time he went out on that field. Fletcher Cox knew what he had to do, and he made sure he got it done to the best of his ability. That man is probably one of the best pass rushers the Eagles are ever gonna see. And quite frankly, I don't quite put him on the same level as Aaron Donald, but he's up there. He's definitely up there.
If there was a tier list, Aaron Donald would be at S and or S plus even because I don't think anybody touches him in the current league right now. And Fletcher Cox would be at like S or A plus tier. Like he's a tier below Aaron Donald, but it's hard to be on the same tier as a guy such as Aaron Donald who never really had a down season.
Yeah, no, that's definitely hard to do. But Fletcher Cox still quite an impressive career that the man had. And like I said, he's definitely one of the better pass rushers that I've seen in my lifetime.
Along with obviously the Super Bowl championship, he's only been a one-time All Pro, which is actually surprising.
I also want to talk about this real quick. We need to talk about the careers that Aaron Donald and Fletcher Cox have had in an era where it's so hard to get to the quarterback because quarterbacks are treated with such prestige. If you breathe on Patrick Mahomes, you basically getting a roughing call.
Also, a few years ago, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, that year when Cam Newton was bitching about having a concussion and shit, that was what really hurt the pass rush because you basically couldn't put your full body weight into a sack anymore. You had to go a lot easier, so getting sacks was almost harder to do even with the stationary quarterbacks.
Yeah, no,
And so
it's quite impressive when you look at those careers, especially in the era that they played in, where it's so hard to get to the quarterback because quarterbacks are held in such high regard by the league.
Also, when I just mentioned Cam Newton, shout out to the biggest game manager to ever exist that thinks he's better than he actually is. This man
Yeah,
still
Cam
thinks
Newton's
that he
gotten a little too big for his own britches. He's definitely not what he used to be, but back in his day, there's definitely no denying his greatness. Back when
nowadays.
back when he was in his prime.
This man still thinks he can start for an NFL team. No, you can't. There's no NFL team that would want you to start for them. Like,
Yeah,
bro,
I'm sorry,
your best
Cam. I love
receiver,
you, but like, I'm sorry. You're done, man. It's time. It's time. Just give it up, dude. Give it up.
his best receiver when he last played was the ground and Casper. Okay, he is not that good anymore, and he needs to accept that. And he needs to really stop flaming current NFL quarterbacks that can probably throw circles around him, other than maybe Desmond Ritter.
That and RG3 too, dude. I see RG3 all over Twitter, especially on what we're gonna discuss about our biggest story to close out today's episode. But he has had quite a lot to say about the Justin Fields move and the potential, you know, new quarterback for the Chicago Bears. And I keep seeing this man just just dig and dig and dig in this hole that he's in. I cannot. I really used to respect RG3, and then he just became a Twitter guy, and like Twitter guys, I'm sorry, you're just tweeting shit just for reactions at this point, my guy.
While
You're
we're on
just
the
tweeting shit
topic
for
of that
reactions.
draft class, can we talk about a quarterback from that draft class that isn't cringy and annoying? Andrew Luck has stayed relatively out of the public eye since he left football.
And you know what? Respect to Andrew Luck. The man had a hell of a career, even though it was cut, criminally short by a Colts organization that turned him into glue. But Andrew Luck, man, that man was insane when he actually played.
Yeah, and not only that, but he was always good sport about like getting hit and stuff like that. Like he always congratulated them or said something nice to him after he got hit. You can really see it in one of the. I was watching a compilation at one point, and it got to the point where I think it was Fletcher Cox. It might have been him. Basically, he had grabbed Andrew Luck, and he could have thrown him down, but he just held him until the whistle blew, and you can see Andrew Luck's relief of not getting thrown on the ground on that play. Like, dude, that's how bad his O line was. Like, he was ready to get tile drived into the ground by Fletcher Cox on that play.
Hey, you know what? You know what? You know what? We keep. I used to say, last season whenever I would see quarterbacks on the run and constantly going down, is that they're getting the full blown Justin Fields experience. Justin Fields got the full blown Andrew Luck experience, man.
Okay, real quick to finish up on Fletcher Cox, he did have 3 times second team All Pro, 6 Pro Bowls, 2010 Decades team, an All Rookie team, an All American, and All Sec awards in 2011, which was before his career really started. But yeah, Fletcher Cox, Aaron Donald, 2 of the best defensive players in the current NFL, at least on the D line, and
And now
obviously Jason
retired.
Kelce on the offensive line.
Yeah, now they're retired.
3 really good players that definitely showed that if you treat your body correctly, you can definitely last a while in this
Yeah,
league.
you can. There is definitely longevity to be found in this sport that we all love. If you take care of yourself. I see so many players try to rush back from injury, trying to be Superman, and it ultimately ends up cutting their career drastically short.
And then the final retirement, which is probably the best special teamer not named Devin Hester or Eric or whoever the Bears. You know who I'm talking about with the
Mhm.
Bears returner.
Yeah, Devin
Matthew
Hester.
Slater also retires from the NFL after 16 years with New England.
Yeah, and you know
Um,
what, guys? We don't need to touch on this one, as in depth as we did the other three. But you know what? Quite an impressive career. 16 seasons is nothing to sneeze at. That's for sure. That's definitely got
only
some
thing about
longevity to it.
is he was a 3 time Super Bowl champion, obviously with New England for all of them. One of probably the better returners to ever play the game, um, at least in terms of longevity. And honestly, one of the things I just realized when going through his stats, he even had a forced fumble and fumble recovery in his career, which means he probably either fumbled it once himself or he forced one.
Hey, that's quite
So
impressive, especially for someone that played primarily special teams. Special teams return.
yeah, and that's impressive for basically anybody. So let's go ahead and shift away from the retirements now and talk about some of the signings and such that we've seen over the offseason so far.
Oh boy, guys,
Starting,
this is where shit gets interesting because man, this offseason has been bonkers.
so you and I talked about this before going live, and I think you are correct with who we should start with. Let's start with Russell Wilson signing a 1 year league or veteran minimum with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, let me just say for the record, I felt like Russell Wilson was going to work out in Denver. I really did. When Denver initially got Russell Wilson, I thought, man, this is for sure going to turn Denver's fortunes around. They got some decent receivers. They got a solid backfield. You know, and Russell Wilson, that's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And boy, did that blow up in my face.
Now, Nathaniel
Man.
Hackett obviously was a big reason for Russell's struggles the first season he was there.
Yeah, I'm
And
definitely going to admit that. Then we see Sean Payton come in, and Sean Payton fixes Russell Wilson. I put the term fixes in quotes because he didn't really fix Russell Wilson.
I think Russell Wilson fixed Russell Wilson because he had at least a competent enough head coach to where, time management wasn't put on him too. Or at least it wasn't put on him fully.
Yeah, no,
Um,
but as far as getting Russ back to that level he was with the Seahawks, I don't know if Russ is ever gonna achieve that level again. I quite frankly, I think Russ might be washed at this point. It might be, he might be coming towards the closing parts of his career at this point.
and you can't talk about Russell Wilson. We're going to bring this up briefly as you're going to talk more about this later. But you can't talk about Russell Wilson without talking about Justin Fields coming into Pittsburgh too.
Yeah, no, the
Um,
Steelers got two. They got a veteran quarterback who's a proven Super Bowl winner, and they have a young quarterback that never really got a fair chance. And guys, they got them both for dirt cheap, for
yeah,
pennies
they
off that
got
they
them
found on
both.
the sidewalk.
They got them both for that. This is the total price of both of them. Russell Wilson, you give him $1.21 million or something like that, and a sixth that can turn to a fourth for Justin Fields. Like
Exactly.
you basically retooled your quarterback room for a bag of chips and like 62 cents.
Yeah, for
Like
real. It's impressive what the Steelers were able to do in that quarterback room for so little.
you went from having
It it it
uncertainty at
it, it,
quarterback.
it, it borderlines on criminal because quite frankly, some of these teams got robbed.
They got robbed blind, might I add. The thing with the Steelers too is they haven't really had a quarterback worth talking about really since the Ben Roethlisberger retirement, and now they have
What are we
two
going to
of
talk
them.
about Mitchell Trubisky and Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, like that's terrible. That's awful. That's not worth talking about. Oh no, we can't talk anything about Mason Rudolph, right? No, he's not good either.
I just
The
want
quarterback
I
room
do
for the
want to bring up
Steelers.
something, to that one guy on that I saw on Twitter that asked what he does with his signed, framed Pickett jersey. What were you doing with that in the first place?
I mean, they expected him to be good, but like there was already some things working against him. Obviously, his small hands being one of them. Um, I can blame OC for his struggles for at least the first year, maybe the first 2 years, because Matt Canada is absolutely awful at play calling. But he largely is just not good at playing football as a quarterback.
Yeah,
Uh,
no,
I
it
actually,
just Kenny Pickett. And especially when the Steelers had first brought in Russ, the way he took the Russell Wilson signing, dude, unprofessional. Unprofessional. You needed to sit for a while. You know that you need to develop Kenny if you ever even want to have a shot at playing quarterback in the NFL. You need to sit behind someone that actually knows what they're doing.
I also wanted to bring up, I saw this statistic earlier. I can't remember the exact number, but since Ben Roethlisberger retired, the Steelers have only thrown for like less than 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but you know what?
Really bad.
Quite frankly, I think the Steelers are about to have a comeback season. I some of the moves that team has made throughout this offseason, I definitely feel like that team could start contending again.
Okay, so let's move off of Russell Wilson. We're going to talk about one that's a little less money, but it's definitely something that was earned. Um, Gardner Minshew signs a 2-year, $24 million deal with the Las Vegas Raiders.
The Las Vegas Raiders, from the Colts to the Raiders, and you know what? He's gonna be the starting QB in Las Vegas too. First off, I'm a Gardner Minshew guy. I like Gardner Minshew. I think he's a meme king, and quite frankly, I think he's a walking shit post. And if we could bring back the Gardner Minshew football Chuck Norris memes, I would be very happy.
On top of that, Gardner Minshew, people don't seem to understand, but he definitely earned this contract from how he played last year.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Like, especially considering that the Colts were not a great team last year. They were passable. For a team in their position, but Gardner Minshew stepping in for Anthony Richardson when Anthony went down, and quite frankly, Gardner played. He almost led that team to the playoffs.
People don't seem to get that the reason they lost that game against Houston wasn't because of Gardner Minshew. Yeah, he might have underthrown that ball a little bit, but that should not have ever been a thing you considered passing. That down should have never been a passing down.
Yeah, no,
You should have
it
handed
was
the
a
ball
bad play
off.
call, and quite frankly, that's not on Gardner. That's on the offensive coordinator or head coach.
Put this into perspective. Gardner Minshew had 3,305 yards, 15 touchdowns, and yeah, he had 9 interceptions, but some of the teams he played last year were absolute demons on defense. This guy had, again, he had driven them into one play away from the playoffs. If they would have let Jonathan Taylor stay on that field, don't think Texans make it to the playoffs. I think the Colts would win that game.
I
Um,
think that's a fair assumption.
But yeah, Gardner Minshew signs with Las Vegas. At minimum, he's competing with Aiden O'Connell, but I'm pretty sure he's the starter unless they draft somebody, which I don't think they do.
Yeah, I don't realistically seeing Las Vegas trying to draft a quarterback because I don't necessarily see them in a position to get one of the better quarterbacks in the league or in the draft.
Okay, so next quarterback we're talking about, we're saving the biggest deals for last here. Sam Howell was traded from Washington to Seattle, where he could potentially start for them.
Guys, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I like Sam Howell. I don't think he's terrible. I think he stepped into a bad situation in Washington because quite frankly, that's what you're getting in Washington. You're getting a bad situation. And I think he tried to make the best of it for what he could. And I definitely hope that he can, sort of have a comeback with the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, yeah, you guys have to remember, Sam Howell was leading the league in passing yards on Washington's offense for probably a good 60% of the season almost.
Yeah, it was kind of insane. He did really well the beginning part of the season, and then just Washington, I feel like, just fell apart around him, and he's not a quarterback that can lift up the team when the team's falling. He's not at that.
He's a quarterback that needs tools, and quite frankly, his tools all broke in Washington.
Yeah, he basically only had Terry McLaurin, and that was about it.
Yeah,
Like,
no, he's definitely a toolbox quarterback, but like I said, I like Sam Howell. I think the kid has talent. I think it's just a matter of him having to tap into that talent.
yeah, which we have obviously yet to see him actually have to do, largely because of, again, the team he's on. It was obviously run by an absolute imbecile for the most of the time while he was there too, which didn't help. But like Sam Howell still finished 12th in yardage last year,
Yeah, and he was
despite the fact
ben-
that he
and you have to remember he was benched. Probably what week was he benched?
He was benched, I think, a couple weeks before the end of the season for Jameis Winston.
Yeah, no, you guys have to remember, this kid didn't even play the whole season. This kid sat out probably a good, what, 3, 4, maybe even 5 weeks.
Yeah, he was. Let me actually look at that real quick. I'm making sure I bring up the stats and stuff of each person we're talking about. So if there's anything we need to touch on, I'll have it in front of me. Let me see here. He played, it shows all 17, but he was benched in part of those games, at least 3 or 4 of them, if not 5.
Yeah, no, you have to like Sam Howell. We're both Sam Howell guys. We like Sam Howell here, and Sam, we want to see you succeed. So best of luck to you in Seattle. I really want to see you light up the league, man.
Okay, so next up, let's talk about the second biggest deal that was handed out this offseason. Baker Mayfield re-signs with Tampa Bay on a 3-year, $100 million deal with 50 mil guaranteed.
Okay, let me just say, I love Baker Mayfield. I love me some Baker Mayfield. The man's career is defined by one word, and that is underdog. And if you can't root for the underdog, I'm sorry, you have no spot in sports. Not just this sport, in sports as a whole. You gotta love yourself an underdog story, and Baker Mayfield's career is literally the story of an underdog.
What's For one thing I want to bring up about Baker was 2 years ago, the first game he was on the Rams, he drove them back down the field to beat the Las Vegas Raiders with less than a week of prep time. He probably didn't even know who any of his wide receivers were at that point.
This man gets dumped from Cleveland, gets dumped to Carolina, gets dumped from Carolina, goes and does what you just mentioned with the Rams, and then this man goes to Tampa Bay and balls out with Mike Evans and fucking Chris Godwin, and just like we saw the best version of Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, and I'm not afraid to say that.
And it's actually true. Statistically, that backs up because his highest career passer rating was with them. His highest career completion percentage was with them. His highest yardage was with them. His highest touchdown total was with them as well.
Yeah, like I said, guys, we got the best version of Baker Mayfield, and quite frankly, I think he earned every freaking penny of what the Bucks are paying him. However, I do want to throw this out there. With the Bucks paying Baker that much money, it does make me kind of think, how much are the Packers going to pay Jordan Love? Because Jordan Love played half a season of good football, and the Packers seem dead set on paying this kid. So if the Packers think he's another Hall of Fame quarterback, then by all means pay him. But if he doesn't work out and he plays like he did in the first half of the season, then you're severely overpaying a mediocre quarterback.
And let me bring this up too. The severe difference between Baker and Jordan Love too is Baker had like a year or two in Cleveland where he looked really good too, and he had a year or two where he worked really bad.
And quite frankly, those bad years in Cleveland, those could have been avoided had they not rushed him back from injury.
Exactly, like they almost. I mean, I think he forced himself to play the second one.
The second one, I definitely think we can pin on him, but I definitely think he learned his lesson from it because he saw, okay, I'm not playing like myself. I'm playing terribly. I gotta recover.
But the one thing you have to commend Baker for is I feel like he knew he almost had to because he probably wanted to stay with Cleveland. And he knew if he missed half the season, they would not re-sign him.
Realistically, probably. And you know what? Also, props to him because, my God, it takes toughness to play on an injury like he had. My God, if nothing else, you gotta say Baker Mayfield's a tough cookie.
Yeah, he's got to be the second or third toughest quarterback in the NFL right now.
Yeah, no, that man definitely
weird.
has dealt with some pain in his career.
I know that sounds weird, but I think I know Justin Herbert's tough, if not tougher than him. He had that rib cartilage broken rib cartilage that one year.
I
Plus,
mean,
his
Justin
scoring.
Herbert, Justin Fields, and Baker Mayfield, probably the 3 toughest quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, the other ones are fucking pansies. As soon as they get hit, they bitch about it. These three are just like, okay, hit me again. That's the type of players they are.
Yeah, for real, for real.
Just a real quick recap of Baker Mayfield's numbers this past season. He had 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. His 28 touchdowns was 7th in the league. His yardage was 9th, and his interceptions were 10th.
Yeah, no, not bad. Not bad. Especially for a team that is in tank division. Like, that entire division was not good, as we all know. But, quite frankly, I think the Bucks could quite possibly be on the upswing again because they found their quarterback. And quite frankly, their new quarterback fell into their lap.
Okay, so last quarterback to talk about today is Kirk Cousins signing a 4-year, $180 million contract.
Off of injury, okay, let me just say this. Kirk Cousins' agent must be Jesus Christ himself. Off an Achilles injury? Are you kidding? I mean,
mind you, this is also him heading into his age 35 season as well.
I mean, okay. I'm gonna pluck the low hanging fruit here. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense that he's going to a Southern team. I mean, we all know that they love Cousins in the South.
Yeah. Okay, so Kirk Cousins' numbers: 2,331 yards, 18 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Keep in mind, he didn't play more than maybe a little over half the season last year.
Yeah, no. I quite frankly, I don't know if the Falcons are over if the Falcons see something that I'm not seeing or what, but you know what? Kirk's gonna have weapons in Atlanta because I know the biggest talk about Justin Fields going to Atlanta was he's gonna have weapons there and that's gonna help him develop. But they went and got Kirk instead. So Kirk definitely has weapons at his disposal in Atlanta. It's just off an Achilles injury that took him out for more than I think probably a little more than half the season. Just I don't know. I don't know.
See, the one thing that you and I have actually mentioned a little bit before free agency started, Kirk Cousins is probably not going to win you a Super Bowl, but considering the division you're in, he might win you a division title or two while he's there.
Yeah,
and even
quite
maybe
frankly, I mean, you are in tank division, but again, both me and Ginger Chain stand on this firmly. We will die on this hill. Kirk Cousins is not a Super Bowl quarterback. You can do worse than Kirk Cousins. You can do a lot worse than Kirk Cousins. But you can also do a lot better than Kirk Cousins.
Let's just say Kirk Cousins does make it to the Super Bowl for you. That's probably because of your defense, and that's probably more because of play calling and scheme than anything else.
I don't see Kirk Cousins making a Super Bowl in his career.
He's better than Jimmy Garoppolo, which is why I think he could possibly get you to one, but he won't be the reason you get to one.
Yeah, no. It's definitely hard to say in regards to Cousins. I don't know how I feel about that deal. Ultimately, I think it might end up fucking Atlanta.
Now let's talk about what's arguably the most talented group of the offseason that had signings. We're going to start with Gus Edwards signing a 2-year, $6.5 million deal with my Chargers specifically.
I'm going to let you take the reins on this one because I know this is your team. So go off, my boy.
Okay, so Gus Edwards, keep in mind, he was sharing a backfield with multiple running backs. And no, I know the joke is Lamar Jackson's a running back. He's still a quarterback, but he was still taking carries from Gus Edwards. He's heading to a system where your quarterback is not a scrambler, and he is currently the RB1, and even if we draft somebody, I think he remains that way at least for the first season he's here. But with a running back by committee, plus Lamar Jackson welching carries from him, he had 810 yards and 13 touchdowns, which is tied 5th in the NFL. Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, that's not bad, especially for a Ravens running back on a team that shares the ball with Lamar. Not to mention with Austin Eckler gone, I don't feel like Gus Edwards is quite on the level that Eckler was, but I think he's a passable replacement for the time being.
Yeah, that's what I said when we initially signed him too. He's not on Eckler's level. I think he's better at short yardage situations than Eckler, because Eckler always tries to kind of shift around. He doesn't really want to plow through the line. He wants to go around it. Gus Edwards has shown that he will plow through that line if he needs to.
Yeah, like I said,
And that
passable replacement for the time being, but ultimately, if the Chargers want to win a Super Bowl, they are going to need to upgrade at not just that position, but several others as well.
Let's talk about another low amount paid for a running back. Joe Mixon was traded to Houston for a seventh round pick and then immediately signed a 3 year, $27 million contract with them.
You know, guys, I like Joe Mixon. I think the fact that his career was that his season was cut short last year was definitely on the back of that injury. And I quite frankly, I like him. I like this move of him going to Houston. Houston is a young franchise, a young upstart franchise that has found their quarterback, found their niche, and now they finally have some veteran presence on that offense. I definitely think it's going to be an upgrade to that Houston offense, and I cannot wait to see what CJ Stroud is able to do with the signings that the Texans have, made to, sort of build around him, because the Texans have established that this is their guy.
And on the thought of Mixon too, even though it was a down season for him, I believe in a lot of ways, it also isn't exactly a bad season by running back standards. This is his one of his worst seasons, though. I think last year he did have an injury that pulled him off and put him on the shelf a little early. But this past season, even for a down year in some regards, he still rushed for 1,034 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, no, even in a down year, guys, Joe Mixon's still 1,000-yard rusher.
And his worst season by far was the ones where he really wasn't the running back one, or he was injured for part of. This is his highest total rushing yards. Actually, he's like third or fourth highest rushing yardage, but it's right up there with the most he's had, most average yards per carry, and his second most touchdowns of his career. His highest being in 2021 with 13.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I like I said, I like this move, and I'm excited to see what Mixon can bring to that electric Houston offense, because like I said, the Houston Texans last year made the playoffs, and they were a team made of spare parts that they found in the junkyard. So, quite
Right.
frankly, this veteran presence, I think it's going to do numbers for that offense.
And it was obviously a pretty cheap option if you think about it, because with the seventh round pick you traded for him and you only paying him 9 mil a season, which isn't that bad for a running back. That's pretty cheap, all things considered.
Yeah, all things considered, they got him for a pretty good deal. And like I said, you got a solid veteran for a young offense.
Okay,
If nothing else, he's gonna be able to sort of tutor the younger guys below him, and it's gonna help that Houston offense.
and then the next guy we're going to talk about is Tony Pollard, who signs a 3 year, $21 million contract with the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, so let me just say for the record, I thought Tony Pollard was better than Zeke when they were both in Dallas. And then Zeke left Dallas last season, and we saw what Tony Pollard was really made of, and he's actually kind of mid.
Yeah, he had 1,005 yards, which isn't bad for a running back. That's 12th in the league, but he only had 6 total touchdowns, which makes him 19th in the league in that category.
Yeah, no, like
And
I like, especially like, I don't know. I still think he's better than Zeke. Don't get me wrong, Zeke's washed, but like, I don't know what I saw from him last season. It was not as impressive as what I saw from him when he was competing with Zeke for the spot. I don't know if that's due to, him not having any competition for the spot, but I want to see him go back to that form that he was in when he was competing for the spot, because he was a good running back then. I don't know what happened last season.
I think Tony Pollard is more of a running back that needs that second guy to push him. And I think he does that in Tennessee with their current running back. don't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he was backing up Derrick Henry, and he actually played pretty well when he got carries. So I think with him, he'll push Tony Pollard to be good, and I think Pollard will push him to be just as good. And I just remembered the guy's name, Tonje Spears. He's basically the new era Tony Pollard that was behind a really good veteran, didn't really get much of a shot, and then now Tony Pollard's coming in as a veteran, and he'll probably have to wait behind him for a bit. But I think Tony Pollard with 1,005 yards, 6 touchdowns, mind you, this is with the 7th most carries in the NFL, so he didn't really utilize his carries that well. But again, I think he's more of a 1A, 1B type of running back.
I definitely think so as well.
Okay, so we talked about some of the lower tier guys. Obviously, all these guys aren't really that bad, but compared to the people we're about to talk about, they're definitely not on these people's level. We're going to start
we're getting into the good stuff, guys, as far as the running backs go. Here we go.
Let's start with the king himself. Derrick Henry signs a 2-year, $16 million contract with the Baltimore Ravens.
All hail the king. All hail the Ravens. Who is stopping that offense now? Genuine question. Who is stopping that Ravens offense now?
Every linebacker in the league just felt that they've stirred the force when they figured out they have to try to somehow block Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry out of the backfield.
You know,
that's almost impossible to do.
That Ravens offense is terrifying to look at. It is quite frankly, if the Ravens don't at least make the AFC Championship game again with this offense, this team has bigger problems to address. But holy shit, signing Derrick Henry when you already have Lamar Jackson coming off of an MVP caliber season, holy shit.
It is quite something to say the least when it comes to those guys. It's obviously Lamar Jackson himself can burn you quite well, and he never had a running back anywhere near the level of Henry that you actually have to fully cut to. So I think Baltimore will run roughshod over their division this year and literally run through opposition.
It's very possible. I think the only ones that might compete with them are I don't know. Cincinnati might be able to compete a little bit, and Pittsburgh even to a little bit of a lesser degree. But like come on, like the Browns.
Also, I want to point this out, and this is going to be a matchup I'm going to love watching because it will be an absolute fucking dogfight for this defense to try to do it. Kansas City does play Baltimore in Kansas City this year.
That's going to be interesting, and quite frankly, I want to see the Ravens get their revenge on Patrick Mahomes and, his Kermit the Frog crew, his Muppet crew.
So Derrick Henry is entering his age 30 season. He just turned 30 the 4th of January. However, he has already proven that 27 age, normal depression of running backs does not apply to him.
Yeah, no, very much so. He has proven that he is here to stay, and he is indeed the king.
He ran for 1,167 yards, which is second in the NFL in his age 29 season, and 12 touchdowns, which is 7th in the NFL.
Yeah, no, absolutely insane numbers from a guy that just turned 30.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing that he's been able to keep the pace he's been able to keep up to this point. Next up, we're going to talk about one that we kind of skipped a little bit on. You're going to talk more about this guy later, but DeAndre Swift signs a contract with the Chicago Bears with a three-year, $24 million deal.
Okay, guys, so obviously I am from the Chicago area, as we all know. So I'm very well connected with what the Bears have going on. I hear about it all the time, despite them not being my team anymore. I can't support a team that doesn't want to support themselves, but I'll get to that later. Guys, I know the big word on the street was the Bears during the offseason were supposed to be targeting Saquon Barkley. Quite frankly, I think them going after Swift and getting the cheaper option is ultimately better. I think Swift is just as good as Barkley is currently. Don't get me wrong, he's not Barkley in his prime good yet, but he's younger. He's got something to prove, and quite frankly, he's cheaper. That's the bottom line, is he's cheaper, and he's just as good as Barkley is right now.
I want to toss out there too that DeAndre Swift on another team that had in the Eagles that had multiple running backs plus a running quarterback did have 1,049 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he did miss one game last season.
Yeah, no, it's quite a thing to see what the Bears did, and like I said, guys, we are going to touch on this ultimately later to close out the show. That's going to be our big closing segment because, man, both myself and Ginger Chains here, we both have very animated feelings about what has gone down in Chicago. But but like I said, we are going to touch on that later. But as far as the Swift signing goes, great move by the Bears. I definitely think this is going to be a huge help for them. If it gets them to that next level, great. But you know what? I quite frankly, guys, I put so much blind faith into the Bears over the 26 years of my existence being a Bears fan. And every single time they spat in my face. So until I see results from the Bears, I'm not going to hop on the Bears bandwagon.
All right, so DeAndre Swift, obviously a good signing. Let's talk about next. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley signing a 3-year deal, $37.7 million with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, let me just say for the record, Saquon immediately had some issues with Tiki Barber when he went to the Eagles. Tiki, you're one to talk about team loyalty, my guy. You are the one. We all know how your tenure with the Giants ended. It didn't exactly end well. Like, you are the one to talk about team loyalty. Come on, Tiki. I expect better from you.
Yeah, and like to touch base real quick on Tiki Barber too. Though he played with the Giants for his entire career, and he was never on the level of Saquon Barkley, in my opinion. And I think part of why Tiki responded the way he did was because of jealousy. Like, the loss of Saquon Barkley in today's game hurts the Giants more than the loss of him in his day.
I definitely think that could be true. But I definitely also hold Tiki Barber in a higher regard than to, attack players over Twitter about team loyalty. Because ultimately, it's as the Bears did with Justin Fields. Ultimately, it's a business. It's a business. I understand that it's a business, and loyalty does not mean anything in this league. And quite frankly, not only did Saquon make that quite clear, but the Bears made that quite clear. And like I said, guys, there's no such thing as loyalty in business. It's business.
So with Saquon Barkley, he's coming off a year where he had, I think it was about 1,300 total yards. No, it was a little over 1,200 total yards, 10 total touchdowns. And something important to bring up about Saquon Barkley when it comes to last year, he was the only piece on that offense that worked from start to finish of that year.
Yeah, and honestly, he was still one of the better backs as far as fantasy goes. He was still a fantastic fantasy running back.
See, I think he's going to do much better with the Eagles. I don't know if he'll get as many touchdowns because, obviously the whole tush-push thing still exists.
Yeah, I honestly think that might be 2 words that he's going to grow very scared of is tush-push. But, yeah.
But we'll see how that works out for him. He did finish with 962 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground last year, again, behind a horrendous Giants O-line. And with basically no help from the passing game for most of the season.
Yeah, for real. Like, Saquon Barkley is still a very talented running back, even if he is not in his prime anymore. But still very, very talented back.
For those that are wondering, he just turned 27 the 9th of February.
All right, do we have anything else that goes as far as running backs?
We have one more signing with the running backs, and I saved this one for last because I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. Josh Jacobs signs a 4-year, $48 million contract with the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, man. You know what? The Packers nearly had the best tandem back duo in the league, and they had it for all of 20 minutes.
John, finished with 805 yards and 6 touchdowns. Again, he was in Las Vegas. And one important thing to talk about with Jacobs this past season is for well over half of it, he had to deal with Josh McDaniels being an absolute buffoon when it comes to play calling.
Yeah, no, and like I said, guys, the Packers nearly had one of the best tandem back duos in the league, and they had it for all of 20 minutes. Because as we all know, as soon as they sign fucking, I'm blanking again. As soon as they sign Josh Jacobs, we all know, like 20 minutes later, hey, we're releasing Aaron Jones.
Which, by the way, I didn't put that in here, but Aaron Jones also goes to a rival in Minnesota.
Yeah, that I definitely think we could touch on that briefly. Aaron Jones, definitely a big upgrade for that Minnesota running back room, especially with Dalvin Cook gone. I definitely think that what we saw from Alexander Madison proved that he was not the answer to Dalvin Cook. So I definitely think that that's going to be a huge help for that Vikings running back room. But as far as the Vikings being quote unquote good, let's just put it. I'm just going to put it in terms like this that you can all understand. Their QB1 is Sam Darnold.
I would not be surprised if Justin Jefferson becomes Odell this year and throws fits on the sideline because of how fucking bad Sam Darnold's going to be trying to get him the football.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's bad. It's bad. The Vikings need to draft a quarterback, and they need to draft the right one.
I would not be surprised if we see Justin Jefferson get in a fist fight with Darnold because he keeps overthrowing him. All right, so we're done with running backs now. Let's move on to wide receivers.
Where are we starting with the wide receivers, Ken?
Let's start with the biggest signing this time. Do it a little bit in reverse here. Calvin Ridley signs a 4-year, $92 million contract with the Tennessee Titans.
Hey, you know what? I think this is definitely a great move for Tennessee. I definitely think that I don't know if Will Levis is necessarily a franchise quarterback, but I did like what I saw from him last season. At least from what I did see. He's proven that he's definitely better than Ryan Tannehill. He's better than Ryan Tannehill. As far as being a franchise quarterback, that is yet to be seen. But I like Will Levis. I like what I saw. And quite frankly, I think this Calvin Ridley signing is going to be a great thing for him because he finally has a real target other than DeAndre Hopkins to throw to.
Yeah, and Calvin Ridley had 1,016 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. And obviously we can't bring quarterbacks into why he was bad because he did have Trevor Lawrence for most of the season. But he was largely in and out of like being good or bad last season. And I think that was just rust from not playing for a year.
Yeah, also, let's just keep him away from the casinos.
Yeah, keep him away from the casinos. You guys have Josh Allen, just have him grab him by the neck anytime he tries to go to a casino and just pull him back into whatever car you guys have and take him back to the facilities.
Yeah, let's keep him away from the sports books.
All right, so next guy we're talking about is a guy that you're somewhat familiar with in Darnell Mooney going to the Atlanta Falcons.
Okay, guys. I like Darnell Mooney. I really did. I don't necessarily think he was an all-star wide receiver or you know, like some all-time great, but I did like Darnell Mooney in his tenure in Chicago. I almost heard the rumor was that he was almost going to land in Kansas City, which I think it would be nice to see Darnell Mooney get a ring, but you know, I don't want to see it happen like that.
It's always Kansas City, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, no, fuck Kansas City. I don't want to see a player that I used to be big on, you know, sell his soul for Kansas City. But going to Atlanta, I definitely think he's going to be a good target for Cousins down there. I definitely think Atlanta is overhauling the damage done by Arthur Smith. If they don't Atlanta Falcons it again, then I definitely think they could have a shot at winning that division. But It's just like the Chicago Bears. Every time they do something right, they find a way to fuck it up. And until I see results from the Falcons are just another one of those teams. I need to see them. I need to see them have results before I place faith in this team.
To be fair with the Darnell Mooney, he did not play well last year, but he largely had Tyson Bagent throwing him the football for a good chunk of that last season. And I think that did affect his productivity. Obviously, it doesn't affect DJ Moore because DJ Moore is a superstar.
Unfortunately, I think his tenure with the Bears is going to be remembered by the dropped Hail Mary that he dropped from Justin Fields to lose a game to, I think it was fucking Denver or something. But,
You want to hear what that reminds?
But the pass that was nearly called the Hail Mooney.
Hey, you want to know what that drop pass reminds me of? Devontae Adams dropping a pass for you that could have won you a game in Madden.
Shut up! Shut up!
I'm sorry, I had to. I hate Devontae because he's on the Raiders, so I had to talk shit about him.
Guys, guys, for those of you who don't know, that's just our own little side project that we've been doing. Where we've both been running our own little Madden franchises.
So I think that's all we really have to say about Mooney. There isn't much to talk about because last year was a down year for him, and I think that was largely because he was in Chicago with Tyson Bagent for one. So let's move on to one of the bigger.
Not to mention, Chicago when Justin Fields was healthy, we all know Justin Fields' favorite target was DJ Moore.
Yeah, that's definitely true. He trusted him and Cole Kmet with his fucking life. Next up, let's talk about a guy who actually restructured his deal and added a few years, and Mike Evans staying in Tampa Bay.
All right, guys. I think Mike Evans staying in Tampa Bay is definitely the right call, especially with them having Baker as their QB. As we established, Baker was able to flourish last season in Tampa Bay, and Tampa has not exactly shed a lot of the talent that they had from last season. If anything, I think they've maybe even improved. So I definitely think that this is going to be the right call, not only for him, but for the team he is with, and for the quarterback that they have.
Yeah, it's the thing with Tampa too is a lot of Baker's success was obviously due to how good Mike Evans is. Mike Evans had 1,255 of his 4,044 yards and 13 of his 28 touchdowns.
So yeah, I mean that's quite impressive.
And mind you, Mike Evans is also 30 years old too. He did that as a 30-year-old wide receiver.
Yeah, no, and especially in Tampa where they had Chris Godwin too. Like Chris Godwin's no slouch.
Okay, so we all know Mike Evans is probably going to be a future Hall of Fame. He calls it quits. He has never had less than 1,000 yards in his career, and that's quite something for a wide receiver never to dip below that.
Yeah, no, that's quite insane, honestly.
Next up, we're going to talk about a guy who I believe gets a little more hate than he deserves in Gabe Davis, who went from the Buffalo Bills to the Jacksonville Jaguars on a 3-year, $39 million contract.
To a degree, I definitely think you are right. I definitely think some of the Gabe Davis hate is unwarranted, but I definitely think to a certain degree that it is warranted as well, because Gabe Davis is not exactly, a star receiver. He's passable in the slot, in my opinion, but as far as being a solid wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, I just don't know.
Yeah, I think he too much hate in the degree that people just don't think he's good, like, at all. Like, there's no upside to him. Like, he only plays one or two games.
Gabe Davis definitely has upside. There is definitely upside to Gabe Davis. It's just, I don't know if it's wide receiver 1 or 2 upside.
Yeah, he's definitely a third-string guy. You can call him maybe a fringe second-string guy with the right first-string guy, but he's definitely more of a third-string guy.
Yeah.
But to be fair to him, he had 45 receptions, 746 yards, and 7 touchdowns in last year with Josh Allen.
Which isn't terrible. I mean, especially on a team where you're playing with Stephon Diggs.
And that is wide receiver 3. That is fringe wide receiver 2 numbers, which is why I said what I said. But he's definitely a wide receiver 3 on the upper tier of that at worst, or at best, he's like lower end second string guy. But I
Yeah,
do think
he's not terrible. You can do a lot worse than Gabe Davis as your receiver.
And yeah, I think Gabe Davis, he goes to play with Trevor Lawrence, who could probably be considered a step down from Allen right now.
I definitely think
But
that is warranted. The Jaguars definitely did have an off season last year. But I definitely think a large part of that is due to, Trevor Lawrence's injury that he sustained.
yeah, he sustained an injury. He forced himself to play through it a couple times, and then he obviously had to stay out for most of the remainder of like the last 3 or 4 games. And I still think Trevor Lawrence is a top quarterback in the NFL, but he needs to be less
Do
reckless
I
with his
think
health.
Trevor Lawrence was as good as we were hyping him up to be after his rookie season? No. Do I still think
No,
that Trevor Lawrence is a very talented quarterback in the NFL? Absolutely.
he's not. To me, he's not Peyton Manning, and he's not Andrew Luck. I think that's been proven. But he's definitely not a bad quarterback. And honestly, I think this whole comparing quarterbacks coming out of the draft to current quarterbacks is kind of stupid to do to begin with.
It gets dumber every year. It gets dumber every year.
And let's talk about one of the last wide receiver the last wide receiver movement we're going to talk about. My boy Keenan Allen going to the Bears for a 6th-round pick.
Again, guys, I am very familiar with the Bears, as we've established. I have heard all about this deal, and until the biggest story that we are going to wrap up with, I was over the moon about this signing. I thought that, oh my God, the Bears are going to have the best wide receiver room in the NFL, no questions asked. The wide receiver room of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Marvin Harrison Jr. What that could have been. Oh my God, that would have been absolutely bonkers.
Now, Keenan Allen's going to be entering his age 32 season, but he had 1,243 yards and 7 touchdowns. He was definitely one of the few bright spots on a Chargers team that did not play well last year, largely due to injuries to some of their star players on both sides of the football, and because Brandon Staley's a fucking idiot.
Well, I think everyone knows that Staley's a fucking idiot, but like it's Keenan Allen. Yeah, he's 32, but quite frankly, he's still one of the best receivers in the league.
And honestly, up until this past season, he was criminally underrated. His route running is one of the best in the league. Are the best, but
honestly,
I think we can
yeah.
kind of say
like I said, I was over the moon about this signing. I don't know how I feel about it now. I guess we'll have to see. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because as we all know, as you guys may have guessed, I am not very happy about the Bears situation with Justin Fields and their new possible quarterback. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, so we're going to move on to tight ends. This is arguably the weakest group we're going to be talking about today. I only picked out 3, and we're going to start with Noah Fant, who signed a 2-year, $21 million deal to stay with Seattle. Now, the reason why I say this is a pretty weak class is because these are 3 of the better ones that were in the class. Noah Fant had 414 yards, did not find the end zone last year, however, but I believe he is more of a blocking tight end. And that's why I think they kept him, because one of the guys I'm going to talk about was with Seattle and left them as well. Noah Fant was pretty good with Denver, too. I think maybe he gets more of that passing role again this year.
I definitely think you could be right, especially with him being in Seattle and, having, who Seattle has in their quarterback room. I mean, they just got what fucking I'm blanking again.
They just got
Sam Howell, and and plus they still have Geno Smith. Like, neither of those guys are necessarily bad. Like I said, we both like Sam Howell, and I don't necessarily hate Geno Smith. I definitely think Geno had a down year last year, from what we saw from, him stepping in for Russ the first time. But at the same time, I definitely think Geno Smith is he's got more to give than I think we're all giving him.
Yeah, Geno Smith, for those that didn't watch football last season or didn't see a lot of Seattle, he did have 3,624 yards and 20 touchdowns last year. He did not do bad.
Yeah, like I said, I don't hate Geno Smith, and I think he's got more to show. It's just a matter of can we get him a team that allows him to unlock his full potential? Because I definitely like what I saw the first time he stepped in for Russ, and then obviously he has a down year, but down years happen. Down years happen, guys, and that's another thing we're gonna touch on later when we get to our big story.
And another thing to talk about when it comes to Geno Smith is he only played 15 games. He missed two, and I think he missed part of that third one because he was knocked out with an injury. And so 20 touchdowns and 9 picks for only 15 games isn't that bad.
I mean, that's what that's practically a 2.0 fucking touchdown to interception ratio. I mean,
Yeah,
what more do you want?
Yeah, so Geno Smith obviously is a good quarterback for Noah Fant, and I think he will probably get more targets now since he's probably going to be the tight end one next year.
Yeah.
But we were just talking about one Seattle tight end. Let's talk about what used to be a Seattle tight end. Will Dissly goes over to my LA Chargers for a pretty cheap deal, 3-year, $14 million. Now,
as far as this being an upgrade from Gerald Everett, I definitely think this is a solid move from you guys. I definitely think this is one of the better moves that the Chargers have made this offseason. Gerald Everett he's not necessarily a bad tight end, but I definitely think that you guys could have upgraded. And quite frankly, we all know that the Bears still have Cole Kmet, who is going to be their first string tight end. So I definitely think Will Dissly going to the Chargers, it could be good. It could be good. I think it could be fruitful, not just for Dissly, but for Justin Herbert as well.
Let me also pitch this out here, too. His stats last year are not good. He only had 172 yards and a touchdown, but we signed Dissly because of his blocking ability. For those that don't know, Will Dissly was ranked third among tight ends in blocking, only below Kelsey and Kittle.
Yeah, like that's impressive. Those like Kelsey and Kittle, there's no disputing that those two are on a whole different echelon of tight end. But like being right behind those two, like you're basically the best of what's left.
Exactly. They're the one there, and then there's the two, and then there's that huge gap between them and the third. And right now, in terms of blocking, Will Dissly was the best at it last year.
Yeah, and quite frankly, if there's one thing that the Chargers need for Justin Herbert, it's protection for him.
Yeah, because his injuries last year were both broken fingers. His first broken finger was on his non-throwing hand, so he was able to play through it. However, when he broke his right finger, he actually did try to come back into the game and throw, but after an injury, he literally could not grip a football properly, so they had to take him out the remainder of the season. Okay, so with that, let's get to the last tight end signing. And you brought up Gerald Everett, and it is Gerald Everett going to the Chicago Bears on a 2-year, $12 million deal.
Well, guys, like I said, as we all know, Robert Tonyan is what turned into Gerald Everett. And as far as that being a upgrade for the tight end too behind Cole Kmet, yeah, that's an upgrade. Tonyan. Don't get me wrong, Tanyan's not terrible, but Tonyan he's past his prime. He's over the hill. But Gerald Everett, I definitely think that's a solid blocking tight end for the Bears to have. Because obviously we all know that Cole Kmet's the one catching the balls. But as far as protection for whoever their quarterback will be, I definitely think that Gerald Everett is an upgrade from Tonyan.
Now, for Gerald Everett, what's important to know is, yes, he's a good blocker. He did have 407 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, however, too. So he is a capable tight end.
Yeah, he's not completely useless when it comes to the air game either. Justin Fields is like, he doesn't have only one tight end. I'm not even Justin Fields anymore. I'm sorry. I've gotten used to that. But whoever the Bears quarterback may be, they have Kmet, and Everett's not useless. He can catch footballs as well.
He was actually one of the few bright spots for the Chargers offense, especially after Herbert went down with an injury. He did do quite a bit of damage while Easton Stick was throwing him the football. Okay, so Tight ends. So I only put three because those are really the three notable guys. The tight end class this year was not great in terms of moving teams. There were a few really good tight ends that stayed with their teams, Hunter Henry and a few others like him. But those were the three that shifted teams that were the most, worth talking about.
Yeah, I definitely
So
agree. I think what next we have the offensive line that we're touching on for the moves.
yes, next is offensive line. We
And
are
guys,
going
we're
to
not going to
start.
spend a whole ton of time touching on offensive line and defensive line because I feel like obviously these are filler positions. They play the physical positions that no one talks about. It's the less glamorous side of football.
Now, we will talk about the biggest name, arguably, on the free agency market, despite his age. Tyron Smith goes to the New York Jets for 1 year for $6.5 million deal.
Hey, you know what? If the New York Jets are dead set on Aaron Rodgers being their guy, they need to protect him. We all know what happened last season because they can't protect their quarterback. And quite frankly, this is what the Jets need. They need to upgrade their offensive line. They are fine at wide receiver. They have plenty of young talent. They have the veteran presence in Aaron Rodgers. And as much as I fucking hate the bastard, god damn it, can Aaron Rodgers play? I can't stand him, but god damn it, can Aaron Rodgers play?
So, with Tyron Smith, keep in mind, he was one of the best tackles in the league for a while, and he could still be considered one. Just age and injuries have caught up with him. So, that's something to keep an eye on, too. But the next signing I want to talk about is makes almost as much sense in terms of protecting the quarterback. Robert Hunt signs a 5 year, $1 million contract to go from Miami to the Carolina Panthers.
Again, another great move. If anything, that I don't know if this is necessarily going to pull Carolina out of the shithole that they are in because Chicago set them back at least 10 years last year with that first overall pick trade. But this is definitely an upgrade for that offensive line. This is definitely the kind of protection that they need to get for Bryce Young if Bryce Young is to ever develop into any kind of quarterback in the NFL. Even if it's a backup quarterback, Bryce Young is going to need that protection.
Also, another thing that that I'm going to talk about real quick when it comes to Carolina, because I did not put it on the list, but I do feel like it's worth mentioning. Um, the Panthers also signed another offensive guard in Damian Lewis, who obviously those two are guards, so you're shoring up the interior of that O line. But this wide receiver I did not put on the list, but Deontay Johnson was acquired from Pittsburgh for a 2024 seventh round pick. And they gave up Dante Jackson, who's almost 30 years old, and so he will start regressing. And they did do a little bit of a pick swap as well.
And you know what? For a wide receiver that's probably gonna be the wide receiver two to Adam Thielen, I don't think this is necessarily terrible for them. The Panthers know that they need to pull themselves out of football hell. Hell, they're not even in football hell. They're just in hell. But they know what they got to do, and it's gonna be a long road to get there. It's gonna be a very long road and a very stressful road. I definitely think that Panthers fans have quite a few more seasons of being in misery before they can start to see improvement. But it's a start, and that's what you need. It's a start because last year you had nothing. Because
I have two more linemen I'm going to bring up. I have four more, but I think the last two I'm going to talk about are the most worthy of talking about. Lloyd Cushenberry goes to Tennessee on a 4 year, $50 million contract. That is a center. So they are trying to make sure they protect Will Levis if they want to see if that is their guy indeed. And protection is obviously one of the biggest contributors to how well a quarterback does.
exactly that is, guys. I don't care what anyone says. Protection is paramount to developing a quarterback. That is why the Bears have not developed a good quarterback in their entire existence as a franchise. Like
Now, let me
they go hand in hand. if you want to have a good quarterback, that quarterback needs to have good guys protecting him.
Now, I want to bring this up too. Obviously, as a Chargers fan, I've seen this firsthand. Not every quarterback needs the protection for a seven. I saw Justin Herbert do really well under pressure the last few seasons.
Oh, and
But the
I'm
thing
not
is, if,
saying that there aren't quarterbacks that don't thrive under pressure, but in
but I
order
want to,
to develop a young quarterback, especially from scratch, that quarterback is going to need protection so that quarterback has time to go through their progressions.
but to separate him from Justin Fields, and this is something important, Justin Herbert didn't have to do it every single play.
Yeah, that is something
And
very important to point out. Justin Fields was running for his life damn near every single play during his tenure in Chicago. Justin Herbert, on the other hand, we obviously the Chargers had a very down season last season. We're not going to deny that. But if it weren't for Brandon Staley, I genuinely think the Chargers had a playoff roster. That defense was killer. It's just the man that was running it was absolute dog shit. And
yeah,
then
and I'm
they
going to bring
had
up
a very talented offense as well.
Yeah, and Brandon Staley, I'll obviously bring up later because that'll be the second to last topic we talk about. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about why he was such a bad guy when it came to defense, specifically when we get to that point. But the final offensive lineman I want to bring up that's actually important is Jonah Williams signing a 2-year, $30 million contract with Arizona again, to help protect Kyler Murray. You
Yeah,
put
and you know what? I also think obviously since obviously word on the street is that the Bears are going to use the first overall pick to draft Caleb Williams, and that obviously means they're probably not going to land Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that Arizona is probably going to be the most likely landing spot for MHJ now. So with that protection for Kyler is finally going to have a generational wide receiver to throw to in that retirement home that they call the Arizona Cardinals. So I don't know.
mass
As far as bad teams go, the Cardinals were definitely the best bad team last year. If this elevates them to be a good team, who knows? Who knows? But as far as bad teams go, they were definitely the best of the bad teams.
Yeah, and that's the last lineman that I'm going to talk about because again, I feel like those ones are kind of the biggest key factors to the team's success moving forward. Um, let's talk next about some of the pass rushers now. We're going to start with, I think, the biggest steal of this offseason, and that being the Giants trading for Brian Burns. I believe they just basically did a pick swap. They will receive 2024 second and a fifth, and will be sending over a 2024 fifth in the deal, as well as receiving another fifth in 2025. But that was an absolute steal by the Giants, in my opinion.
I definitely agree. I definitely think this is a big upgrade for that Giants defense, which, as we all know, that Giants defense was horseshit last season. But this is definitely a big upgrade for them. The Giants need some sort of pass rush, if anything, to get started on that defensive side of the ball. And this is definitely a huge steal for that team. Now it's simply a matter of maybe get one more pass rusher and address that secondary.
And most importantly for Brian Burns, he goes from being the only real threat on a D line in Carolina to being a second threat on the New York's D line, so he doesn't have to do all the work himself, with Dexter Lawrence being next to it. Being the only threat on Carolina's D line, he still was able to get 8 sacks and a forced fumble, as well as 32 solo tackles.
Yeah, that's another thing. With Dexter Lawrence still being there, that's why I say maybe just one more pass rusher for that Giants defense. You don't necessarily need one. But as far as that defense goes, that's a huge steal for them. Now it's simply maybe get one more pass rusher, but definitely address that secondary.
Yeah, most definitely address the secondary. I think you have to get some type of corner help. You could maybe get away with your current safeties, but you definitely want to look into basically upgrading both if you really want to have a shot in that division right now.
Yeah, because especially considering that they share a division with the Eagles and the Cowboys.
So next up, we're going to talk about Eric Armstead, who signed a 3-year, $51 million contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars, going from the 49ers to Jacksonville.
Guys, this is huge for Jacksonville, and I almost want to say this might be the return of Saxonville. Eric Armstead is a deadly defensive lineman. From what we saw last season from his, Super Bowl run with the San Francisco 49ers, he didn't miss a step from his injury the year before. He didn't miss a step. This guy is lethal on that defensive line, and that guy can get to the quarterback. And I definitely think that this is going to be a huge, huge help for that defense.
Mention, if you think about it, he had 5 sacks and 15 solo tackles, but he was on a stacked D-line in San Fran, so there wasn't enough numbers to go around.
Yeah, for real. Eric Armstead is a phenomenal D-lineman. Guys, don't get it twisted. Very talented, and I think he's going to a team where they're definitely going to need his talents a bit more than San Francisco needed them, because as we all know, San Francisco was stacked from top to bottom last season.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that helps Eric Armstead. He'll actually be able to show his talent here because he won't be next to, Chase Young, Bosa, and all these other people. It'll just be him, and he can actually show what he can do. Next up for the D lineman, we're going to talk about one of the biggest contracts. Justin Madubuike re-signs with the Baltimore Ravens on a 4-year, $98 million deal.
And guys, that Ravens defense just continues to stay dominant as ever. Ever since I was a kid, that was always a big narrative in Baltimore is defense, 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 and even since the days of Ray Lewis and them, Baltimore has always been about defense. And quite frankly, Baltimore, as we all know now, has a lethal offense as well. So Baltimore, look out for Baltimore this upcoming season, guys. The Ravens look fucking scary.
So Justin Madubuike, to put this in perspective, he's 26 years old, so that contract wouldn't run out until he's 30. He has 13 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 38 solo tackles on a really stacked Ravens defense.
Yeah, no, guys, like I said, watch out. Watch out. The Ravens are done playing second fiddle to the Chiefs, and I think they made that quite clear.
Yeah, and next up is a bit of an underrated signing, in my opinion, as not a big name, but he was big for the team he was part of. Jonathan Greenard goes from Houston to Minnesota in a 4-year, $76 million contract.
Hey, you know what? That Minnesota pass rush, it was definitely lacking last season. It missed that spark that made it run. Because they didn't necessarily have bad pass rushers in Minnesota. But I definitely think that this might be something to, reignite that spark and sort of bring back that Minnesota defensive line.
The biggest thing about Jonathan Greenard, too, is he's only 26 years old, and he had 12.5 sacks, good for tied 10th in the NFL.
Yeah, no, he's very young. Obviously, he knows how to get to the quarterback. I mean, being 10th in sacks, like that ain't easy. Being top 10 in sacks, that ain't easy in this NFL.
Especially with a lot of those protecting the quarterback, along with a lot of the really good linemen that we see now, too.
Yeah, again, it's so hard to play defense, especially be a pass rusher in today's NFL. So even being top 10 as far as pass rushing goes, that is impressive.
So with that, we're going to head to our last signing of the defensive lineman. Arguably one of the biggest ones, but definitely the biggest one in terms of money. Christian Wilkins signs a 4-year, $110 million contract with the Las Vegas Raiders.
Hey, you know what? I definitely think that the Raiders definitely started to find their identity a bit in the second half of the season once they fired Josh McDaniels. And I definitely think that Christian Wilkins going over there is definitely going to make that defense a whole lot more scarier than it was. That defense was not necessarily great, but they were okay. because as we all know, defense is what drives the Raiders. That black hole defense. And now that they have a pass rusher like Christian Wilkins, that is actually kind of scary to think about.
Important to note, he is teaming up alongside Max Crosby, one of the best edge rushers in the game right now.
Indeed. Like, that is going to be scary. And if the Raiders can figure out what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball, I definitely think that Las Vegas can be a team to be reckoned with.
As well as their secondary, because the Raiders' secondary is not that good. They kind of rely on that front four to get the pressure to force mistakes. If they can figure out that CB room, I think the AFC West will be as good as it was hyped up to be 2 years ago.
It's a possibility. It's definitely a possibility.
And for Wilkins, he had 9 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 38 tackles on the Miami Dolphins team, which, again, he was largely really the biggest threat when it came to pass rush, so he was doubled quite frequently.
Yeah, and especially now that you're sharing a defensive line with Max Crosby, who's probably going to get double teamed most of the time, if not triple teamed. That means that, if anything, he's just going to have a clear path to the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of worried about it, but again, I'm not worried about it because I know their secondary is garbage, and if we can just keep them away from Herbert long enough, he will make a play. But for teams like the Broncos who don't have an elite quarterback, and literally anybody that doesn't have an elite quarterback that can get away from pressure, Wilkins and Crosby are going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be a problem for teams like, I don't know, Carolina and all these young teams that, they don't have, the offense to combat that.
Hell, if the Raiders played the Bears, I think that's the game that proves how bad Caleb Williams actually is. If he ends up going.
Oh, definitely. We all know how Caleb Williams does under pressure. He does not thrive. He crumbles. Which is something, again, we are going to talk about in our last segment of the show.
So went through the D linemen. Now let's talk about their brethren in the front 7 with the linebackers specifically. First, let's talk about the 3-year, $50 million contract for Bryce Huff to go from the Jets to the Eagles.
All right. I'm not going to lie. I liked where Bryce Huff was. I liked the Jets defense. That Jets defense was good. The only reason they were not good last season is they just gave up. Which, to be fair, with Zach Wilson as your fucking, QB, fucking, I don't blame them. I don't blame them for giving up.
You have Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim fucking Boyle as your quarterbacks. Bitch, I'd give up too.
Yeah, no, I would give up too. Like, that team was not going anywhere, and the Jets had a very good defense. So, if anything, where'd you say he went?
He went to Philadelphia.
So yeah, if anything, that's just another piece to help out that Philadelphia defense.
And another thing to bring up about the Jets defense when it comes to, giving up and stuff, dude, I'd give up too. You make a stop and then one of your quarterbacks throws a pick and you're right back on the field 2 seconds later.
Hey, do me a favor, keep them busy for just a little bit. I'll be right back.
Alrighty. So guys, with Bryce Huff, it's 10 sacks and 19 solo tackles. He was actually really good on a pretty stacked Jets defense. He is entering his age 25 season, so he's still pretty young. He'll be 29, I think, at the end of that contract. Maybe a little bit older. But not 29, 28 at the end of that contract. That's pretty cheap for a guy that's going to still be in his prime not in his prime, but maybe near the end of it at the end of that contract. But he'd still be playing good football during the majority, if not throughout the entire thing. The other thing about Bryce Huff, you guys, is I believe with some of his stats he had before this past season, he wasn't really great the other 3 seasons that he played, but he was largely hidden on the depth chart for the first 2 or 3 years. This was really his first chance to actually start every game of the season, which he did. The other 3 seasons he started 14 games, 9 games, and then 14 games again. So he missed 3 2 seasons, and he missed like 7 or whatever the season between those two. But even then, he was still producing a few sacks, two, and then 3.5. He did have a forced fumble, and he was pretty good at tackling every single year when he did have his opportunities. So
All right, I
I
am
think
back.
that I think that's their Fletcher Cox replacement.
I definitely think so too. I was able to listen in on what you were saying, obviously, because I have it going on my phone. Because you know, because you know, I step away. That's what I use. So I definitely think you made some very valuable points, and I definitely think this is a big upgrade for that Philadelphia defense that just lost Fletcher Cox.
Yeah, and that's Bryce Huff is still obviously, as I said, he's young. He's still going to be pretty much not far, if not still kind of in his prime at the end of that contract. So depending on how he plays, he might earn a second one somewhere.
Only
Um,
time will tell.
okay, so with Bryce Huff, we're done with Bryce Huff for now. Let's head to one of the more interesting signings. We're talking about the man who used to be part of one of the top, or if not the top defense in sports, moving over to a division rival in Patrick Queen, who heads from Baltimore to Pittsburgh on a 3-year, $41 million contract.
Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I liked this Patrick Queen signing for the Steelers. The Steelers obviously need help for TJ Watt. And because obviously that's literally the only guy on that defense. And Patrick Queen is definitely an upgrade. And I think Patrick Queen has a lot to offer this Steelers defense. I really do. I don't necessarily think he's going to be like on the level of like like I don't know, a Steelers legend like Troy Polamalu, but you know what? I definitely think Patrick Queen is very talented, and I definitely think that this is going to be a huge help for that Steelers defense, and especially for a team that wants to start being competitive again. This is the kind of signing that they need.
Also, something important that I want to bring up. This brings a spark to that middle linebacker room that we have not seen since Ryan Shazier, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. He's don't get me wrong. He's not on the defensive levels of like the Steelers legend Troy Polamalu, because like quite frankly, like how are you gonna ever beat Troy Polamalu?
Exactly, it's just not possible.
Like, but as far as upgrading the defense goes, I definitely think these are the kind of signs that the Steelers need if they want to start competing again.
Okay, so also I wanted to bring this up before we get to the next guy. First off, with Patrick Queen, he had 3.5 sacks, a forced fumble, an interception, and 84 tackles. So he's definitely a pretty dependable tackle in the middle of that field.
And guys, don't
Um,
just real quick. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to compare linebackers to safeties. I know that's what Troy Polamalu played. We're just talking as far as defensive players go in general as a whole.
Also, in terms of presence too, like Troy Polamalu was a presence on defense.
Exactly.
All right, and one more thing I wanted to bring up before I move to the next guy. Alex Highsmith is also on the Steelers. He plays opposite TJ Watt. He had 34 solo tackles, 7 sacks, and 2 interceptions. So you're basically adding a middle linebacker in between those two really good defenders.
Yeah, no. The Steelers, I like the moves the Steelers have made. As we already established, that QB room is very good and they got it for dirt cheap. And I think if they maybe get some more like real targets on that offense, and just maybe, kind of fine tune that defense, the Steelers could genuinely start competing again.
So I wanted to bring up next a former Charger returning to the Chargers and Denzel Perriman, who signed a 1-year, $3 million contract.
I'm gonna
I
let you
mainly
take the
want to
reins
talk
on
about.
this. This is your team. Go off, my boy.
Obviously, I'm going to talk more about this later when we have our Chargers portion of this discussion. But this man was on the Chargers for the majority of his career, other than the last 2 years. And in those last 2 years, he was in, I think it was two. Let me just make sure I'm right on that before I
Quite
continue.
frankly, I'm starting to think we can just give you a portion every week where you talk about the Chargers, what we call it fully charged.
Yeah, that might be actually pretty fun to do. So yeah, he was in San Diego, then turned to LA. from 2015 to 2020. He played 2 years with the Raiders, and then he played with Houston last year. What's important is he's always been a pretty surefire tackler. He's come away with a few sacks and forced fumbles in his career, but I think he's always been a tackling middle linebacker. And we obviously, I don't think we have Kenneth Murray anymore. We don't have Eric Hendricks anymore, so we only have a second-year guy there. This is important for production, but also in terms of veteran presence for the middle linebacker room.
All right.
Because
yeah.
he is 31 years old, so this is a good one-year signing. He'll be 32 if he still has it. He was a key contributor to the Houston Texans playoff run too. He had a few sacks in a key moment.
I'm also guys. This is sort of off topic, real quick, but guys, if you guys do come up with any ideas for segments, please share them with us because guys, we're always looking for new segments to do for the show. But this is just like I said, guys. This is the first episode after years of planning this. So, guys, I'm probably gonna say it again at the end of the show. But if you just come up with good segment ideas, please share.
Okay, so another one we're going to talk about, same type of contract as Josh Uche with the New England Patriots, 1 year, $3 million contract. This guy's only 25 years old, by the way.
Guys, the Patriots defense, as we all know, the Patriots are rebuilding. That franchise is in shambles with that, and quite frankly, that franchise is entering a whole new era of its existence. No Tom Brady, no Bill Belichick. There's nothing left of that empire. That empire there's nothing left of that empire but ash and what was.
See, the thing about the signing, he's 25. He had 368 solo tackles. This Patriots defense was getting the shit kicked out of them largely for the same reason some of the other teams were. Their offense was not that good.
Yeah, no. If you want to have a good defense, your offense needs to put points on the board to still win games. You can have a great defense all you want. That's not enough. We've seen teams how the Bears with Mitchell Trubisky is a perfect example. If the Bears had a good offense, the Bears probably had like an all-decade defense back then.
Yeah, exactly. And I might make you throw up with this one, but Rex Grossman and the Bears, when they went to the Super Bowl, that was defense heavily carried.
The Bears defense literally carried them to the Super Bowl. That defense was that good. But Rex Grossman. Imagine if the Bears actually built around Kyle Orton.
So, random question for you before we move on to the next guy. Would you rather have Rex Grossman leading your team or Zach Wilson?
Oh, shit. That's hard. That is hard. I don't know. I almost say Zach Wilson because at least Zach Wilson can run.
So I want to kind of do a little bit of research here because I feel like this is a question that is definitely one that has some layers to it. In his career, Zach Wilson is not great record-wise, but does have 6,293 yards, 23 touchdowns, 25 interceptions. Mind you, he's been benched a lot because he's bad. But that's still not super bad in terms of yardage when you know he doesn't play more than like half the games.
In terms of yardage, he's not a bad quarterback. It's a simple matter of game mechanics and how he plays and how he manages time and how he manages his offense that's bad.
Now let's compare that to the other garbage quarterback that we're going to be talking about here. Rex Grossman had 54 games, did not have a good record other than that 1 year that he went to the Super Bowl, obviously.
Which again was all carried by defense.
Yeah, 10,232 yards, 56 touchdowns, 60 interceptions.
Yeah, I'm still going Zach Wilson.
Yeah, Zach Wilson has shown flashes of having a little bit of upside. And who knows, maybe he gets a chance. I forgot where he went to. Maybe he gets a
At
chance
least
where.
Zach Wilson holds on to the snap.
Okay, so the last linebacker we're going to talk about was the biggest one, and that is arguably one of the bigger names that was in free agency. We are talking about the man that signed a 2-year, $49 million contract with the Houston Texans in Danielle Hunter, going from Minnesota to Houston.
Oh man, guys, that is huge for that Houston defense. Again, guys, as we established, Houston last year was a team that made the playoffs with a team built of spare parts that they found in the junkyard. So finding a pass rusher like Danielle Hunter, like that is going to pay dividends. That is going to pay off exponentially for that Texans defense.
Especially when you pair him up with Will Anderson Jr., who they drafted last year.
Exactly.
See, it was spare parts held together by tape, bubblegum,
And faith.
rubber and hope, probably. And then you had the rookies that were coming in that were dealing with having to see if they can meld with these players, and they did. And now that Houston knows that they have a competitive team at the moment, they are going all in to make sure they rebuild it to the best of their abilities. Danielle Hunter is a big piece. He had 16 and a half sacks, fifth in the NFL in that category.
Yeah, I was about to say, where do you rank? That's gotta be easily top 5.
Yeah, that's exactly fifth on the docket there for sacks. Four forced fumbles, which was tied fifth in the NFL as well. And then he has 54 solo tackles. Mind you, that literally all defensive players are ranked in that. And he's 1/10 in that, which that's among all active defensive players
That
know
is
how to.
absolutely insane. Danielle
And
Hunter
they
is an
got
absolute beast, and like I said, I cannot wait to see what the Texans do this upcoming season because, as you just said, they know they have a competitive team, especially in the division that they're in. The division title is probably all but theirs. So I like I said, I definitely think the Houston Texans are going to be an exciting team to watch this upcoming season.
on top of that, you look at it in a two-year $49 million, he will be 31 by the time that contract ends. But this guy has not shown to be slowing down at all yet. He has been pretty consistent throughout his career by looks of it. And
Yeah.
obviously he has harassed their quarterbacks for, 10 years or so at this point. So
Yeah, the dude's got the resume to prove it.
He actually had a career high in sacks last year, by the way, but in his 8 seasons, he has had double sacks in 5 of them.
Very, 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 very good stats for especially for a guy that's been in the league for so long.
Yeah, and I think in terms of sacked numbers, again, he was tied fifth, but I want to kind of see who was the other top, 3 or 4 in that category. So we're going to take a slight detour to talk about that real quick, just to see who he's in league with right now. So in sacks, he was behind. Let me find it here. In sacks, he was only behind Khalil Mack, who had 7. Josh Allen was 17 and a half. Trey Henderson was 17 and a half, and T.J. Watt, who led the league with 19.
Yeah, and those guys are all elite. Like those guys are all absolute elite talents.
And I think Danielle Hunter is right up there with them.
I definitely think so too. Danielle Hunter is up there. He is a beast on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, guys, keep your eye on the Texans. I definitely think that they're going to be one of the more entertaining teams to watch this upcoming season.
And by the way, all 5 of these names have been mainstays in defenses since they've been brought into the league. So,
all right, what else we got on the docket?
Okay, so next up on the docket, we're going to be talking about some other defensive players, specifically in the cornerback room. We have some decent signings here. I think these are not really the biggest names compared to who we talked about up to this point, but I do think that they are names that are worth mentioning. There are 3 of them in the specifically decided to put aside, as these three I feel like are the biggest
Yeah, guys, like
team.
obviously there's not big names in every, position. And obviously we kind of want to do like whole teams, touch on those. That's why we kind of grouped all the offensive linemen together, all the defensive linemen together, and we're kind of just doing, position players at this point. But like I said, guys, these are just the names that are worth mentioning that we have seen so far. Obviously, the draft is still coming up, so obviously, dude, I'm almost thinking that like we do like a live stream for the draft.
That could definitely happen. As long as the draft's on a weekend, typically off for
Yeah, no,
weekends.
obviously, I think the draft. I think what when's the draft this year?
I think it's isn't the draft like a 3 day thing though?
Yeah, yeah.
So that
I'm
might
just trying to remember what weekend it's on.
maybe we do like a live stream of the first round if like
Yeah,
we're both available.
if nothing else, I definitely think the first round of the draft would be worth streaming.
Okay, so let's talk about corners now. Chidobe Awuzie signs with the Tennessee Titans on a 3-year, $36 million contract.
The most fun name to say in all of sports, for the record. I just want to put that out there. Chidobe Awuzie. But
Yeah.
that aside, guys, I definitely think this is a good move for the Titans. That Titans defense needs to tighten things up on their side of the ball. Obviously, that Titans offense had sparks last season. It wasn't, it wasn't fantastic, but they had sparks. And obviously, as we all know, the Titans have upgraded this offseason on both sides of the ball with the Calvin Ridley signing and now the Chidobe Awuzie signing.
Yeah, and that's they're stacking up a pretty good defense now, and they're obviously adding a little bit more to that offense. Again, they are trying to compete in one of the worst divisions in football at the moment, and so they have just about as good of a shot as anybody else at this point.
Again, that's true, and I also do want to point out, like, Mike Vrabel didn't exactly leave behind a terrible, terrible mess when he left either.
Yeah, it's not like Brandon Staley or Bill Belichick. They both left behind pretty shit situations for the people taking over for
Yeah,
them.
no. As far as the guy that's going to be filling in the new spot for the head coaching spot for the Tennessee Titans, they're not walking into a terrible situation. Yeah, it could be better, but you don't have the worst team in the world.
Yeah, you have pieces to work with. You have some pretty veteran pieces as well that could still do very well. Um, here's the new Titans head coach for those that are wondering, because I'm sure nobody's really followed that. We didn't really talk about coach movement either, because I feel like even though there's a lot of them, we can use a separate video for or a
Yeah, I
separate
feel like we
podcast
could
for that.
probably go on and on and on about all 32 coaches.
And it's like, yeah, there's a lot to say,
I
and we
almost think
definitely
that
don't
might
want
be
to.
a good segment for. I almost think that might be a good episode for next week is head coach talk.
Yeah, because obviously a lot of the head coaching positions have already been filled, so it'll be good to talk about each one and what the ceiling and the floor is before the draft with each one. I actually cannot find who the current head coach for Tennessee is. I remember them signing somebody, but
They may have just signed a coordinator or something.
yeah, because it looks like I'm gonna scroll down a little bit further while we're talking, and maybe I find him. Maybe yeah, there's never mind. There's no for sure head coach. Maybe they promoted within, they just haven't changed it yet.
Yeah.
But
If nothing else, we know that they'll have an interim head coach, so we'll have to see. But again, whoever does walk into that situation, you're not getting the worst team in the world. You have things to work with there.
okay, so next guy we're going to talk about is another guy that has switched teams this past offseason. The guy by the name of Jonathan Owens goes from Green Bay to Chicago.
Other guys, aka Simone Biles' husband. Okay, like let's just be real. That's what we all know him as, is Simone Biles' husband. Um, Guys, that Bears defense last season really figured things out once they got Montez Sweat. And now that they have Jonathan Owens, who, don't get me wrong, still very talented player, he's just kind of overshadowed by his wife because, you know, his wife's a fucking Olympian. But Jonathan Owens is very talented, and this is definitely going to be a huge upgrade for that Bears defense. And guys, like I said, it's not like the Bears had a bad defense last year. The Bears had a good defense and really figured things out once they got their hands on Montez Sweat.
I did put Jonathan Owens in the wrong spot. He's actually a safety. He's not a corner. So this could be your Eddie Jackson replacement potentially.
I mean, if anything, that's definitely a viable replacement.
He's 28 years old, had 58 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and 3 passes defended. So he definitely can hold his own. He was obviously on a defense behind some probably really good players, and he was more of a rotational guy. But that's pretty good stats. That is indeed all he was rotational.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the last corner we're going to talk about is probably one of the bigger names that everyone was watching in free agency to see what he was going to do. And luckily for, again, your team, he did not go anywhere. Jalen Johnson re-signs with the Chicago Bears. He's 24 years old, and he re-signed to a pretty decent-looking contract, in all fairness. I'm going to bring up the contract, but this is your guy, or was your guy, so I'm going to let you talk about him as you've seen more of him than me.
Yeah. First off, Jalen Johnson. First off, good on him. Man got fucking paid as he fucking deserved. The kid was outstanding last season. And can you pull up his stats for me? Because I know they were absolutely gross.
31 solo tackles, 1 forced fumble, 4 interceptions, which is 7th in the league, and 10 passes defended.
Yeah, see, guys, like that, the kid is very talented. He's super young, and quite frankly, I'm excited to see what this kid can develop into in the National Football League. If he's got the right help, which, if anything, on the Bears defense, the Bears, they've still got a very good defense. Regardless of how I feel about their offensive situation, their defense is still very, very good.
And something I'm going to toss out here, too, because obviously we do like bringing up the contracts when we can. Let me, real quick, it loaded up something else that wasn't what I clicked on. Okay, so Jalen Johnson, it did the stupid thing again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I'm just going to manually type in contract because this thing's stupid. Oh, there you go. Looks like he signed a 4-year, $76 million contract.
Yeah, rightfully so. Like I said, the kid got paid as he should have been, because my God, he was a star on that Bears defense last season.
That he was. He was definitely one of the bigger bright spots on a defense that wasn't that bad altogether, but he was definitely one of the better corners in the league, in my opinion, that the stats don't show.
Yeah, no, the Bears are still going to be very talented on defense, regardless of how I feel about their offensive situation. It's definitely still going to be fun to watch the Chicago defense play and see what they can get done. And I'm almost kind of excited to see what that Chicago pass rush is going to look like this year. Now they're going to have Montez Sweat for the full year. I'm interested.
So safeties now is the next thing we're going to be talking about. We're going to start with former Philadelphia Eagle and former, I think he had another team here. Let me see what it was. It was Philadelphia and Tennessee. Titans signs a 2-year, $15 million contract with Chicago in Kevin Byard.
Again, not a terrible signing. You know, I don't think that, like I said, these are all teams that the Bears, you know, they don't really need the help. They're still very talented. But again, the Bears are a very young team, and they're looking to build something more. As far as what that more is, we're obviously going to go on about that in our final segment when we close out the show. But guys, the Bears are trying. The Bears are trying, if nothing else. They are trying. They're tired of being walked on, and they're trying. This is the most effort I've seen out of Chicago in probably since I was born. As far as
So with
offseason as far as offseason moves go.
now Kevin Byard is 30, so he's on the twilight stages of his career. He is a surefire tackler as well. 80 solo tackles, an interception, and 3 passes defended. Again, I think him and Owens maybe are rotational back and forth to try to replace the hole left by your All-Pro safety from the past couple seasons.
Yeah,
Obviously,
but
you
you
guys
know
cut
what?
him.
I definitely think like those two are definitely going to be viable replacements for Eddie Jackson. And as we still established, the Bears still have Jalen Johnson. They still have their very talented pass rush. The Bears have a great defense.
Okay, so this one I think is a bigger steal than Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson was only had to sign a league minimum because the Broncos had to pay like all of his salary basically. This I think is one of the true steals, along with the man known as Derrick Henry. Obviously, is a 2-year, $14 million deal. Sends Geno Stone, a former Baltimore Raven, over to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Another rival, another in division trade. What's with the in division trades this year? Like Jesus Christ, we're seeing players from rivals go to rival teams left and right.
And this guy had 44 solo tackles, 7 interceptions, second in the NFL, only behind Deron Bland of the Dallas Cowboys.
Like guys,
And
if you want proof that loyalty means nothing in the NFL, look at this offseason.
And people
Like
complain that Saquon Barkley, we talked about this a little bit earlier, that Saquon Barkley betrayed the Giants. They had 2 years that they could have signed him to a long-term deal and they would not give him the money.
Exactly. Like I said, guys, if you want proof that loyalty does not exist in the NFL, look at this offseason. We have seen so many in-division trades, it's not even funny.
Now, with Geno Stone, what's important to note is with the stats I just gave, you would think he would be a high draft pick, right? He was. People would assume he was like a second or third draft pick by hearing those stats, right?
I mean,
He
if
was
not,
not.
probably like a high third round pick.
No, he wasn't even a third round pick. He was selected pick 219 in the 7th round.
Damn.
He's been balling out as a guy, much like guys like Brock Purdy, who weren't really seen as going to be viable players, and he made himself a viable player.
Yeah, no, and honestly, that's one of my favorite things that we're starting to see in the NFL is these guys that come out of nowhere, these no-name guys that come out of nowhere and make a name for themselves, name for themselves in the National Football League. We saw it with Brock Purdy. We're seeing it with this guy, guys. This is part of why I love football so much.
Okay, so from Geno Stone, we're going to shift over to another guy. 3-year, $21.7 million contract was dealt by the Jacksonville Jaguars to Darnell Savage, a former Green Bay Packer.
Oh boy, Darnell Savage was definitely talented. And where did he go again?
Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is the return of Saxonville. I'm sorry. That Jacksonville pass rush is definitely going to be able to get to the quarterback. And now that they have Darnell Savage, who is definitely a very talented safety, I'm sorry, that Jacksonville defense looks very scary.
And Darnell Savage played only 10 games this year, had 36 solo tackles and 1 pass defended. That means he was largely not really targeted that much.
Yeah. Quite frankly, if you're not targeted that much, that means you're probably doing something right.
Ask Jalen Ramsey; he would tell you.
Yeah, for real. That's why his stats took a major dip because nobody wants to throw near him.
Yeah, people are like, oh, stats are the only thing that matters. And it's like, no, because there are really elite players that people literally refuse to throw to because they know they're going to get burned. Okay, so another safety that moved teams, 25-year-old, former New York Giant goes to the Green Bay Packers on a 4-year, $67 million contract. Xavier McKinney.
All right. Well, first off, as we all know, the Packers needed to replace Darnell Savage, and
Yeah.
you know what? I feel like this. I don't feel like this might be. I don't necessarily feel like this is an upgrade or a downgrade. Honestly, I feel like the Packers defense will remain just as good as they were. Obviously, we all know that Joe Barry was, fucking sabotaging that defense all last season. And that's why the Packers, they choked, as they always do. Again, guys, I still hate the Packers. I am not a Bears fan anymore. I still fucking hate the Packers.
See, but the important thing to state here is because you're no longer a Bears fan, you can hate the Packers, but you can probably at least appreciate more of the talent that's on the team now in
Oh, I
terms of
definitely
individual.
do. Now, as far as the Jordan Love situation goes, I definitely feel like I want to see more before I call this kid an elite quarterback. The tune that Packers fans were singing the first half of all last season was "Love Hurts." It was literally that, like probably the first 8-9 weeks, and then he had his breakout game, and then the Packers caught fire and they made the playoffs.
So to put the Xavier McKinney thing into, a little bit of perspective here, he had 78 solo tackles, one forced fumble, 3 interceptions, and 11 passes defended.
Yeah,
Mind you,
like
he
I
was
said,
on the
I
Giants.
don't necessarily feel like this is an upgrade or a downgrade from Darnell Savage.
I think it's a slight upgrade, in my personal opinion, because the only reason he has more stats is because the Giants' defense is garbage, and he definitely had to drift back and help the corners.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
So I do think he's a slight upgrade, but as of now, I'm not going to say more than slight because we have to see how he does in a defense that isn't, shit.
Yeah, because the Packers definitely have the pieces on defense to be a good defense, but my God, Joe Barry, like really, good thing the Packers got him gone because good God, Joe Barry cannot call. Joe Barry was almost as bad as Brandon Staley at calling defenses.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Another guy that the last safety we're gonna for sure be talking about here is another safety that is obviously a Charger here, Alohi Gilman, who had come in for us a few times for injured players, and he does get to retain a roster spot with us, which I do believe he has earned, as he had 49 solo tackles and 2 interceptions last year, as well as 3 passes defended. He signs a 4-year deal worth a little under $3.5 million.
Okay, okay.
He's pretty solid free safety. It took him a little bit. I think it took him until last year to really catch fire. But once he did, he is one of the better pieces on a Chargers secondary that really only has him, Derwin James, and Asante Samuel Jr. at the moment.
Yeah, no, the Chargers defense is definitely they still have a very talented secondary, and they still have Khalil Mack, and they still have Joey Bosa, and the Chargers defense is just as good as they were. It's simply a matter of figuring out that offense, man.
Now, this is the last player that isn't a special teamer that we are going to talk about is Lohi Elman. I might go through real quick of the free agency news and see if there's anybody that I want to point out before we get to the final 2 segments and before we get to the special teamers. But real quick thing, I'm going to specifically look at some of the teams that we have spotlighted a little bit in terms of teams on the upswing. We're going to go more in depth, obviously, a little bit later after free agency and the draft is done.
Well,
In
at the
terms of
same time, I'd almost say we save this kind of thing for like a free agency winners and losers episode.
I do want to bring up one specific team, though.
All
And
right,
it's
go
one
ahead.
that we get quite a few times. We're going to talk about specifically the Houston Texans, as we are both very high on this organization at the moment. We have a lot of respect for the quarterback that's behind center right now. And
CJ
as we
Stroud is
said,
him. CJ Stroud is him.
and it was a ragtag team last year. Here's the signings that stuff they have made. Joe Mixon, Noah Brown re-signed, and he was pretty good for for CJ after his top receiver went down. Dalton Schultz re-signed into a 3-year, $6 million contract. That is a steal considering how well Dalton Schultz played.
For real. Dalton Schultz is a very good tight end.
Charlie Heck, an offensive tackle, lining him opposite of their Jeremy Tunsil. Their D-line and edge now has Denico Autry, who leaves Tennessee to join the Texans.
That's a big move. That's a big move for that defense.
Tim Settle, who was, I believe, also with I believe it was the Bengals as well. He moves over there on a 2-year deal, only worth $7 million. We already touched on Danielle Hunter. They signed Azeez Al-Shaair from the Titans as well, so they're taking some of their division rival pieces at the moment.
Yeah, guys, don't be surprised if you start seeing the Houston Texans start making these deep playoff runs. They made the divisional round last year with a ragtag team.
With also, a rookie quarterback, rookie wide receiver, second-year halfback, a rookie head coach, and
I was about to say, if nothing else, the Houston Texans last year single-handedly proved that with the right head coach, anything is possible.
Also, they beat what was a powerhouse defense senseless in the wild card round.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, part of it was Joe Flacco throwing interceptions, but the offense was picking apart what was considered a top defense with relative ease.
For real. That Cleveland defense was supposed to be killer, and they dismantled them piece by piece.
So in terms of the secondary, they signed Mike Ford, who was a pretty good choice, Lonnie Johnson, who I believe was a Steeler. They re-signed Desmond King, who was one of their best defenders in the secondary last year, and a former Charger, so I like seeing him get that deal. And Jeff Okudah as well, who was with the Lions and then the Falcons and now with the Texans, as well as re-signing Eric Murray, who was also a pretty good safety for them last year.
Yeah,
they also extend.
I definitely think the Texans are going to be a very, very fun team to watch and a very tough team to beat. They are going to play teams very hard this year.
Tame Fairbairn, their kicker, also re-signed a 3-year, $15.9 million contract, and the punter that was once a Chief is now on the Texans as well.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers all the free agency moves, no?
Yeah, that basically covers all of them. I will bring up two more because they're both kickers, and that's why we saved them for last. Jake Elliott re-signs for a 4-year, $24 million deal to stick with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, well, that's, it's kickers, man. We don't need to really dive deep into kickers or anything or punters or anything like that, special teams. But you know what? For what it's worth, Jake Elliott, you know what? He does his job. He makes field goals. So, you know what? What else is there to say?
So with Jake Elliott, something I wanted to bring up as well as my next kicker, which is the last free agent we're actually going to talk about before we move on to the bigger segments. Elliott was 93.8 for field goal range, which was 10th in the NFL. He also had a long of 61. Only one person had a longer field goal than him last year, and he accounted for 135 of the Eagles' points.
Like I said, he makes field goals. What else is there to say?
Now, I'm also going to bring up my guy Cameron Dicker real quick, who has not signed an extension.
Dicker the kicker!
Dicker the kicker, the guy who single-handedly has helped you win a few games in our Madden franchise, I think.
Yep, he has come in clutch.
So
I think
Cameron
he nailed
Dicker
a 63-yarder my last game.
Exactly. He is almost automatic, and he is one of the few kickers in the league that is basically going to be the next Justin Tucker, in my opinion. So with Cameron Dicker, he had 93.9% from the field goal range, which he only missed 2, to put that in perspective. He had 100% on extra points. His longs 55, and he scored 128 of the Chargers' points this past season. He was once in Philadelphia. He played one game with them in 2020 before we signed him after the Dustin Hopkins injury. And in total, he is 40 of 53.
That's
No,
not
50
bad.
of 50.
As a matter of fact,
No,
that's very
50,
good. That's very
52 of 55 is his career field goal percent or field goals, right?
I mean, shit, 52 of 55? Shit, he's only missed 3?
Yeah, and all three, I know one of them with us was all the ones he has missed was from over 50 yards.
50 plus yards? Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, anything over 40 yards isn't even automatic.
So now let's go on to one of the bigger topics before we head on to the biggest topic. We're going to talk about the LA Chargers. Now, specifically, the thing we're going to be talking about here is the offense, as we've already talked a lot about the defense.
Guys, I think we're probably
I'm
going to call this segment Charged Up. This is where we're going to let my boy here take the reins, go full Chargers fanboy. And because obviously, once I have my favorite team, I'll have my own segment to talk about my team. But we each do want to talk about our own teams because we are very passionate about them. So, guys, introducing the second to last segment of the show, Charged Up with your boy Ginger Chains. Take it away.
Okay, so first off, I am going to let you speak on it first, as we talked about before, just to get a little bit of an unbiased take on it first. Now, I'm typically unbiased as it is, but this is somebody who's completely outside of even the conference that will say what his opinion is about the offense specifically. Also, I need to go get my notes for this, so this will give me time to do that.
All right.
So go ahead and give your thoughts
All
currently
right.
on the
So my
offense.
take on Charged Up. All right. So guys, I am obviously not going to go nearly in depth as my boy here is because he is from Cali. He is a diehard Chargers fan. But guys, I feel like I touched on it a bit earlier in the show. That Chargers defense is phenomenal. You've got Khalil Mack. You've got Joey Bosa. You've got Asante Samuel Jr. Like, come on. These are elite talents. And last year, Brandon Staley fucked all that up because he could not call a defense. Guys, I think it's pretty much a well-known saying at this point, but the only thing prevent defense gets is the only thing it prevents is wins. That's the only thing playing prevent defense does is it prevents wins. And that seemed to be Brandon Staley's favorite defensive formation for whatever fucking reason. I don't know why. He was not a smart head coach. And you know what? It kind of sucks because I was very high on him after his first year as the head coach of the Chargers. I thought, okay, he actually, he might be something. But then we saw what he did with the elite defense that the LA Chargers have right now, and he completely and utterly blew it. So, guys, it kind of leaves the Chargers in a tough spot. They have a great defense, but they shed a lot of pieces on that offense, and now they're really going to need to figure out what they're going to do on that offensive side of the ball. So, guys, I don't know what else to say on the matter. That is my take on Charged Up. I don't know if Ginger Chains is back yet, but like I said, guys, it's kind of a mess on the LA's on the off on the English on the LA offense. But the defense is just as good as last year, if not, better because they've got the younger talents that are also going to develop this year. We still have the draft coming up. There's a lot of things that are going to play into that, but the Chargers are in a tough spot. They shed Keenan Allen. They shed Austin Eckler. They shed Mike Williams. Like, guys, Justin Herbert's thrown to Walmart baggers. That's probably Ginger Chains' favorite saying for Justin Herbert right now, but he's throwing to Walmart baggers, and I can't disagree with him. He's throwing to guys that should be working at Walmart bagging groceries. It's unbelievable. And like I said, I really wanted to see the Chargers do well. I do like Justin Herbert. I'm a big Justin Herbert fan, as a matter of fact. I think the kid is very talented. And you know what? I'm kind of captivated to see how he can, manage this offense of Walmart baggers, because again, this is not the first time that Justin Herbert has had to do this. He has done this before. He's been in this position before. But I also know I sent Kenny here a TikTok, and it was literally Justin Herbert asking where all his offensive weapons went. Donde está my shit? It's yeah. That's
all right. I'm back.
All right, cool. I pretty much just wrapped up my thoughts, so I'm gonna let you take it away for Charged Up.
Okay, so I was still in the room. Obviously, I was just on the other side of it. So, we obviously already brought up the whole lack of talent in terms of who he's throwing to. Like, his most notable target right now is Joshua Palmer and Rick Hand, Quentin Johnston at the moment. Now, obviously, I brought this up and you brought it up during your portion. He has thrown to Walmart baggers / not good talent before. And believe it or not, it was in 2022 where he still finished second in the league in passing with 4,739 yards. Only behind Patrick Mahomes, who almost had 5,300. He finished 25 touchdowns, 10 interceptions that year, and with his highest, believe it or not, his highest completion percentage of his career was throwing to less talented players.
Illusion, how you doing? I am gonna push Illusion's button. Just giving you a heads up. His button's like 2 seconds long.
So yeah, he has his highest completion percentage, 68.2, when he was throwing to less talent than most other quarterbacks had at the time.
Yeah, it's quite a situation that they have over in LA on the Chargers offense. But like I said, at least you guys still have that very elite defense. So I'm kind of interested to see what your new head coach is going to be able to do with that defense, because that defense is still elite.
So to put this into perspective, I brought up Patrick Mahomes' stats from this year, right? When he was throwing to not a lot of talent either,
He was throwing to Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, bro, and they still won the Super Bowl.
And he had Travis Kelce, which is still important to the matter, even if he did slow down a little bit. But Patrick Mahomes, with less talent than he's used to, probably had his worst career stats ever. And I know that for a fact because we know how good Patrick Mahomes is.
Yeah, no, guys, I also want to take a moment to just point out, if last season is considered a down year for the Chiefs and they still won the goddamn Super Bowl, my God, that's fucking terrifying.
So Patrick Mahomes had his second worst season in terms of passing yards last year. He had his second worst, maybe third worst, I guess, passing touchdowns wise with 27, and he had 14 interceptions, the most of his career on any given season. And that's because he did not have wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. Guess what, Patrick? Herbert did that, and he did a lot better than you. I don't care if you won a Super Bowl, go fuck yourself. Okay, on top of that, when it comes to Justin Herbert and this offense, they brought in Gus Edwards, which we touched on earlier. Obviously, he's not a one-for-one replacement for Austin Eckler, but he is still talented.
Guys, I'm also going to point out that these two segments, once I have my team figured out, this is our time for us to be biased, because we are trying to be as unbiased as possible throughout the regularity of the show.
Yeah, so this is kind of our biased take, which is specifically why I said Patrick Mahomes can go fuck himself, because I'm allowed to be biased.
I just don't want the chat coming in and like attacking, like, fuck you, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. Patrick Mahomes has won 3 fucking Super Bowls. I'm like, guys, this is our time to be biased.
Yeah, we were unbiased throughout. Rest of it up to this point for me, and then the next point for you. Let us talk shit Like, it's our show. Like, if you want to be special guests, you can do the same. But let's be honest, everyone's on the same boat with Patrick Mahomes. They don't want him to win anymore. But he's going to because he's basically Tom Brady for this generation.
Yeah, let's
But
face it. Let's face it. He's won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, and last year was considered a down year, and he still fucking won. It's my God. It's annoying.
so one thing you have to respect about Justin Herbert too, not just his talent and all that stuff, he has officially beat the narrative that Oregon quarterbacks are not good in the NFL.
Yeah, no, he has single-handedly proven that point wrong. Working quarterbacks can work in the NFL. Justin Herbert is a prime example. My God, can that kid throw? That kid, not to mention, that kid thrives under pressure. He thrives under pressure almost to the degree of someone that I've like we haven't seen in years. He is so comfortable under pressure that it's not even funny.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know what the exact numbers were, but Herbert under pressure in his career has almost never thrown an interception and has thrown mostly strikes and touchdowns.
Yeah, no, the
Like,
kid thrives in it. He was built in it. He's literally a diamond because it's pressure that makes diamonds, and my God, is Justin Herbert a diamond?
And the thing with Herbert too is you
He's
have to
tough
think
as diamonds
he's done
too
all.
because Jesus Christ, he has no protection.
So he has 17,223 yards, 114 touchdowns, and 42 interceptions in 4 years. Mind you, his coaches have been Anthony Lynn and Brandon Staley for all of those years.
Yeah, not exactly an impressive head coaching chart.
Now, with the offense as well, you still have Rashawn Slater, you still have good guards. You might want to get a right tackle because Trey Pipkins is kind of regressing a little bit. And obviously, we still don't know who our center is going to be because I'm pretty sure Corey Linsley's retiring. He just hasn't made it official yet. So, if you can pick up a lineman in the draft and find a center that's at least competent enough to not let people go past him like a turnstile, Herbert will be fine. He'll be given enough time to throw the ball. In terms of who he's going to throw the ball to, we already touched on two of them with Will Dissly and Hayden Hurst also was signed by them. I forgot to bring that up, but yeah, he's there too.
I mean, it's not an awful signing.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst, Donald Parham, and Will Dissly are his tight ends. Herbert was throwing to these guys specifically in the red zone and specifically when he couldn't find Keenan before. It would always be Donald Parham he would trust with his life in the red zone, and he hardly ever let him down. Besides that one time against the Chiefs where his head smacked into the fucking ground. But that's beside the point. He has a tight end room now that he can constantly ship them in and out and don't have to worry about them being bad at catching the football. Now, in terms of wide receivers, you have Quentin Johnston, who had not a great rookie season. I still believe he can have a good season this coming year if he can get his hands right. And Joshua Palmer, he's proven to be pretty effective when he's been given opportunities. But right now, he has to basically be the top guy or the second guy. And much like we were talking about with Gabe Davis, I don't think he's quite on that spectrum quite yet. That's obviously not me saying Josh Palmer's absolute garbage or anything like that. I just think one more season to really let him develop into that guy could make him into this at least a second string guy.
All right. All
And
right. Do you have anything else to say?
Palmer, with Josh Palmer too. I just wanted to bring this up because this is mainly for other Charger fans that are watching this as well. If there are any. 1,703 yards and 9 touchdowns in 3 years. He was largely a third or fourth receiver in 2021. Still had 353 yards and 4 touchdowns. 769 and 3 in 2022, and then last year he had 581 and 2 touchdowns. So he is basically what Gabe Davis was doing was what he was doing. He was a suitable option when it was needed. He actually made some clutch catches to win games last year. All I think the Chargers need to fix, grab a halfback number 2, which is what their biggest problem was with Eckler. We never had a halfback 2. And get at one receiver in the draft that can catch the football. And I honestly think one of the signings they should consider doing between now and the start of the year is Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think he's a solid wide receiver that would add some depth to our depth chart.
I mean,
To finish off my thought,
I definitely don't think that would be a terrible signing. Obviously, you could do better than, DPJ, but, that the Chargers need guys that can catch footballs, and if nothing else, he can catch footballs, averagely well.
so my last thoughts on this before I give a slight take on the Bears and we go into your segment is
Oh, don't get me
so
don't even get me started. The last segment's a segment for both of us to go off.
okay, so with the Chargers, those are the moves they need to make to kind of keep the offense ticking. What the coaching staff needs to do as well, and I wholeheartedly trust this staff that Harbaugh's put together. Because let's be honest, Harbaugh probably picked these guys by hand.
Honestly, yeah,
Um,
Harbaugh's like idea with the Chargers seems to be out with the old, in with the Wolverines.
and I think that he specifically picked a defensive coordinator that thinks the way he did back when his San Francisco 49ers were the best defense in the NFL. And I think that's going to pay dividends for us because we will have that mentality coach instead of this wussy that we've had every year besides now, basically. And he will hold our players accountable that need to be held accountable. And yeah, that's my thoughts on the Chargers going into this coming year. Um, what should we call the segment about the Bears now?
Oh, this isn't even just about the Bears. This is what we based around the show, guys. That was charged up with Ginger Chains. He is a diehard Chargers fan. Now, guys, this is the final segment of the show. What we have based the show around, as you guys may have guessed, based on the name, guys. This is the fuck up of the week. Guys, every week we are going to pick a team or player that just immensely fumbled the ball and fucked it up. And guys, we almost had the Cowboys on this segment until Saturday happened. Chicago Bears, what are you doing? You imbeciles! You complete dunces! You traded Justin Fields for a half-eaten bag of chips. What are you doing? The fans had Justin's back for once. The Chicago Bears had a quarterback that the fans were behind. And you threw him away like he's garbage. Oh my god, it makes me sick. Makes me sick. Ginger Chains, if you ever want to chime in, go ahead. This legitimately bothers me, and I know you have very animated feelings on it as well.
Okay, real quick, I am going to jump in before you have a fucking aneurysm real quick. Because I feel like you've been close to aneurysm since this happened.
Oh yeah, I've been waiting to get this out, dude.
Okay, so let's talk about statistically speaking. Justin Fields became the second best rushing quarterback in a season in league history back in 2022 when he had 1,043 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. The only one above him is Mike Vick, specifically. Also last year was his best statistical season by quite a large margin, despite missing 4 games, by the way. 2,502 passing yards, which beat his previous total by 320. His average yards per pass was a little bit lower, but that doesn't really matter.
I mean,
16,
to be fair, the Bears had Luke Getsy calling the offense. Screen pass.
16 touchdowns was only 1 less than he had the previous year, but he also had 2 less interceptions. His rushing stats, 657 and 4. That's second best of his career, only behind 2022. Once you gave him DJ Moore, he thrived with DJ Moore. And you were sitting here retooling the team, which, by the way, Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, doesn't really matter because both could probably work with this offense. I think Caleb Williams, much like you, is a bust, though. But Fields, you would have given him 2 quality receivers, 2 quality tight ends.
Hell, if they keep Fields, they're giving him 3 quality wide receivers in Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh yeah, they would have drafted him, but I was talking about in the current moment what they have. Um, and then you're rebuilding the O line, which was the only reason why Justin Fields was getting hurt and having to carry the entire team was because he didn't have an O line, and so he basically had to run for his life, either take off and take these hits,
Everyone,
or he had
I just want to point this out, okay? Everyone complains that Justin Fields holds on to the ball too long. Guys, Justin Fields had the shortest amount of time allowed in the pocket of any quarterback last season. Guys, on average, quarterbacks have about 3.5 seconds in the pocket to go through their progressions. Justin Fields, on average, had 2.3. That is not nearly enough to go through your progressions and decide, okay, am I throwing to this guy? Am I holding on to it? Am I throwing it away? That's not nearly enough. And they're complaining that he's taking too many sacks. I'm sorry. It's hard to develop a quarterback when your offensive line is comprised of Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder.
yeah, it's quite bad.
Not to mention, the Bears had so much dead cap space last year. They could have easily done what they did this season last season and kept Justin Fields. Easily. They chose not to. I don't know if that's the right call because I don't like what they did to Justin Fields. They did Justin Fields dirty. The whole idea when they drafted Justin Fields was to build around Justin Fields. And yes, I understand, guys, that Ryan Poles did not draft Justin Fields. I'm well aware of that. But when Ryan Poles has to take to Twitter and release a whole statement justifying why he did what he did, it probably wasn't exactly justified. They literally drafted Justin Fields to a rebuilding team, and the rebuilding team threw him away like he was trash after the rebuild was complete. What they did to him was dirty, and I hate it. But again, guys, it's as we established earlier in the show. There is no such thing as loyalty in the National Football League. It does not exist. Now the Bears are going to go out and draft some cocky SOB who's so full of himself, despite choking away the entirety of his second half of his college career. This guy is 0-4 against ranked teams, has not won an SEC championship, has not won any. I'm sorry, not won a Pac-12. I'm sorry. He can't win in the SEC either. Guys, I think Jaden Daniels is better than Caleb Williams, based off the fact that Jaden Daniels played in the hard conference division. I don't know, guys. I don't pay attention to college football nearly as much as I probably should, but there's just way too much going on down there. But regardless,
real quick, I wanted to chime in.
But regardless, I hate Caleb Williams, and if people want to go on about, oh, he's the best we've seen since Mahomes, I don't want to hear excuses for this kid. This kid better come in and thrive. This kid has no excuses. Go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to bring this up because we were talking about cocky quarterbacks and stuff. He is a worse and definitely more likely to bust quarterback than Baker Mayfield was coming out of college. Baker Mayfield came out cocky, but guess what? His cockiness was more swagger. It wasn't him acting like everything was going to be easy.
Baker Mayfield wasn't asking for ownership stake in the team that drafted him. Baker Mayfield wasn't showing up to the combine and sitting around and not doing anything. Baker Mayfield, at least, like I said, it was more swagger. He knew what he was capable of. Caleb Williams is coming in thinking he's got the resume of Tom Brady when all he has is last year's Heisman. I don't care about your personal award, kid. I don't give a shit. I want to see you win. And you have proven time and time and again that you are a proven loser that crumbles under pressure and cries to his mom on national TV when his ego gets bruised. If you're gonna cry, guys, I don't want to act like crying isn't okay. It's okay to be upset that you lost, but doing it on national TV in front of all your teammates and loved ones like that. If I were Caleb Williams' teammate, I'm sorry, you just lost my respect. You don't need to make a scene. It's okay to be upset. You do not need to make a scene.
Also, real quick, with the difference between Caleb and Baker, Baker has actually won titles in college. He won the Sugar Bowl back in 2016 with a 35-19 win over Auburn, and he also won a Big 12 championship, beating TCU 41-17.
Yeah, that's another thing. Caleb Williams can't even win a Big 12 championship. He can't win a Pac-12. He can't win a big. He can't win anything. He's a proven loser. And yet all I hear is this kid's a generational talent, and he's the best we've seen since Mahomes. I'm sorry, the only thing generational I'm seeing about this kid is how overhyped he is.
But I believe the same as you. I believe I don't think he's Ryan Leaf, but I do think he is a bust, just like Trey Lance was, just like Ryan Leaf was, just like Jamarcus Russell was. All of them were overhyped from the word go, and all of them flamed out. Mind you, Trey Lance didn't really have an opportunity. Let me just put that out there real quick. But the other two did, and they sucked ass.
Yeah, no, it absolutely disgusts me what they did in Chicago with Justin Fields, and not to mention, I also want to throw this out there for anyone that is still here and watching. Chicago has also said they're keeping their options open at quarterback. If they're trying to fool anyone into thinking they're not drafting Caleb, it's not working. I saw a rumor just going through social media earlier about how they might sign Carson Wentz to a 1-year prove-it deal. That'd be the stupidest idea ever. Like, you're telling me Carson Wentz is more valuable than Justin Fields? You can kiss my fucking ass.
Yeah, and as you brought up before, which you haven't touched on yet, how the hell can Chicago value Chase Claypool over Justin Fields?
For real, they gave away Chase Claypool for a 5th-round pick. They got a 6th-round pick for Justin Fields that might turn into a 4th depending on how much he plays. You mean to tell me that Chase Claypool was more valuable than Justin Fields? Oh my God, this team is I'm gonna steal a word from you, Tree, here, but my God, this team, this is an organization that's run by lol cows. It's run by absolute fucking lol cows.
Yeah, and it's awful. Like, here's the thing with where Justin Fields went. He got shipped off somewhere where he probably is not starting over Russell Wilson. On top of that, I think the Bears did this on purpose, because then if Caleb Williams plays like absolute dog shit, they don't have any stats to show Fields in a different system to contradict them being stupid.
Well, see, that's the thing. I also think that Justin Fields is probably going to end up taking the starting job from Russ after maybe 2-3 weeks. Honestly, I genuinely think that he is the better option on that Steelers offense. And honestly, I'm very excited to see what Justin Fields can do with a head coach like Mike Tomlin, who's never had a losing season. Justin Fields, I love you, kid. And I'm happy to see what this next chapter holds for you, but my God, I'm sorry what Chicago did to you. You did not deserve it. And quite frankly, I'm starting to think that Chicago didn't even deserve you. You are above them. I'm sorry. It's not even up for discussion. Justin Fields is above the Chicago Bears. It breaks my heart to see what they did to him.
See, here's my problem with the whole Chicago thing, too. Let's just say for a second you weren't planning on drafting Caleb Williams, right? Let's just say that. And you kept Justin Fields. You don't even have to sign him yet. He still has a year on his contract. You're only paying him $3.2 million.
Yeah, that was
It,
another thing. He still had a whole
if
nother year
he
left
was a
before
bigger
we even
cap, I
had that fifth
understand,
year
but he's not
option.
worth anything right now because he's still on.
We still had that fifth year option after this year, and that's another thing that bothers me, guys. I genuinely thought worst case scenario is the Bears were gonna keep Justin Fields and still draft Caleb. I thought that would be the absolute worst case scenario, and then it got worse. The Chicago Bears absolutely Chicago Beared this offseason that was handed to them on a silver platter. They still found a way to fuck it up.
And to put this into perspective, what you can also consider that being if Chicago had kept Justin Fields and drafted Caleb Williams, let Justin Fields start. Basically, your fourth year would be your prove it deal at that point. If he did bad with the roster you have now, then you might have a reason to cut him or
Yeah,
trade
no,
him or whatever.
I also hate the fact that the narrative developed that Justin Fields is this horrendous quarterback just because the Bears have the first overall pick. I guarantee you, if the Bears only had the ninth overall pick, there would be no narrative about how terrible Justin Fields is. No, we would still be talking about who's better, Justin Fields or Lamar Jackson.
Which, by the way, I honestly think the answer right now, in terms of just all around, is Justin Fields because he's doing a lot. He's doing pretty good with a hell of a lot less than Lamar is.
Not to mention Justin Fields, tough as nails. I don't think any other quarterback could have survived what we put through Justin, what we put Justin through. I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my English. What we put Justin through in his tenure here was absolutely horrendous, and I genuinely don't think that any other quarterback in the NFL could have survived it.
Yeah, it's absolutely atrocious if you think about one other thing too. And this is important because it has to do with, keeping quarterback from literally dying on half his snaps. Justin Fields was sacked so fucking frequently. Um, does it show me? Over his 3 years in Chicago, by the way, this is 3 years, he was sacked 135 times.
Yeah, now let's go look at Patrick Mahomes and see how many times he's been sacked.
Let me look here real quick. Mind you, Patrick Mahomes, I think, has like twice as many years, but that would be even more shocking. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes, 148 times in his career, and he's had double the length of a career as Justin Fields has had.
Yeah, see, he's barely been sacked more, and he's had twice the career.
He's had 7 years, and Fields has had 3. He's had more than less than half the career Justin Fields has had in terms of, or Justin Fields has had less than half the time of a career as Mahomes has had, and Mahomes has only sacked like 12 more times than him.
Yeah,
Like Jesus.
It's absolutely unbelievable what they did to him. They finally revamped that offensive line. They get all these weapons in the offseason. And again, I thought for sure when we got Keenan Allen, okay, maybe, Keenan's number's 13, maybe we're not going to draft Caleb. And then, no, fuck me.
Also want to point this out, too, because obviously this is about both of our teams. Herbert has been sacked 130 times, but he also has one more year than Justin Fields has.
Again, guys, the quarterbacks can't develop if they don't have protection. It just goes to show. It just goes to show.
And I wanted to look up one more. Obviously, this one, I'm looking up someone, in Tom Brady who had, 20-plus year career. Over his 20-plus year career, he had 565 sacked times. That's not a lot if you divide it by 20.
Yeah, that's really not.
Or actually, if you divide it by 22.
Yeah, do the math real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to do the math right now here. I'm going to go ahead and check this out because I am actually very curious about what this comes up to.
Yeah, how many times was Tom Brady sacked on average per season?
On average, Tom Brady was sacked 25.6 times per year.
You see, guys? You see?
Do you think he would have been a GOAT if he was sacked as many times as Justin Fields was sacked? He probably would have been broken before his 10th year because Justin Fields has been broken a few times himself.
Yeah, no, the Bears broke Justin Fields, and then the Bears are literally giving Justin Fields to the Steelers, like, hey, here, this doesn't work, but it might be fun to fix.
Okay, so it was what, 26 point something per year for Brady?
Something like
that. For Fields, it's been 45 times a season.
Jesus!
And imagine Brady getting sacked that many times.
Oh my God, season. Roger Goodell would have had an aneurysm.
To put this in perspective, his number would have gone from 565 to 990 times if he was sacked as many times as Fields on average was per year of his career.
The entire league would have had a fucking aneurysm. Oh my God.
And it's like, let's just say we compare him to Lamar Jackson real quick. Let's see how many sacks he takes. Because, he's a similar play style player, so it's a little more fair to judge on him, too. Because I am genuinely curious about this one, too, because I don't think it's been that much. So Lamar Jackson's been sacked 169 times, but he's still had twice of a career as Justin Fields has had.
Again, guys, it just goes to show that if you don't protect your quarterback, he's just gonna break. He's just gonna break. And what the Bears did to Justin Fields is wrong. It's despicable, and for it, I fucking hate you, Ryan Pace.
See, and Lamar Jackson being closer to the Justin Fields style of player does make the comparison a little more fair because, Justin Herbert is mobile, but he's also strong enough to break tackles too. And, Brady's a statue, but he has a quick release. So Lamar Jackson, similar play style, he runs a lot. How many times was he sacked? 169. Guess what that averages out to? 28.1 times in 6 years per year for 6 years.
Yeah, these quarterbacks are getting sacked half as many times as Justin.
And yet it's Justin's fault that you guys can't do anything. No, it's the O-line's fault. It's the coach's fault. It's the ownership's fault.
I guess the only thing I have left to say for fuck up of the week is Ryan Pace, you were supposed to bring peace to the Bears organization, not destroy it. What are you doing, man? What are you doing? Like, I understand this was probably the right call for job security, but we finally had a quarterback that the fans were behind. What the fuck, dude? What the fuck?
Also, I want to bring this up real quick, too, because he's not as good of a player as Justin is, unlike some of the other people we've talked about. But in a 12-year career, even Jay Cutler was only sacked 322 times.
It's despicable. It's despicable. And Jay Cutler is still one of the best quarterbacks the Bears have ever had.
And Fields could have been the best you guys have ever had, but again,
and he could have been a developed talent too. The Bears didn't develop Jay Cutler.
Yeah, they got Jay Cutler from Kansas City after he was already partially
Denver.
developed.
We got him from Denver.
Who was I thinking of that? Oh, I was thinking Alex Smith. My bad.
Yeah. All right, guys. I don't know. Ginger Chains, you got anything else to say?
Not really. I mean, I think we covered every base here. The Chicago Bears are a shit franchise no matter what they do. Until they prove some type of, forward progression with literally anything, they're not worthy of a fan base.
Indeed. Chicago Bears, fuck ups of the week. Guys, we will see you guys next week on Monday at noon Central. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Helmet Haven Football Fuck Ups Show. Kenny, you want to say goodbye to the people?
See you guys next week, where we'll most likely be talking about the coaching carousel that had happened before free agency.
Indeed, guys. Next week, episode 2, we'll be talking about head coaching. All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed episode 1 of the Helmet Haven Football Fuck Up Show. Again, guys, we'll see you guys next week.
That was a solidly long show.
I agree. Good 2.5 hours?